Chapter 2118. And Wang Yin was not Qin Feiyang. Facing the powerful Feng Yuan, she did not have the slightest courage to resist. She could only let Feng Yuan slap her face one after another. After more than a dozen slaps, Wang Yin's cheeks were already bleeding. The anger in Qin Feiyang's heart became more and more intense. Qin Feiyang, don't be impulsive. Be careful, or he will reward you with a slap. With his current state, he will definitely not be merciful. At that time, you will definitely bleed. Mu Tianyang saw that the situation was not good and hurriedly transmitted his voice. So what if I bleed? Do you want me to watch a woman get beaten for me? Then am I still a man? Qin Feiyang secretly snorted and rushed forward like lightning, grabbing Feng Yuan's wrist. Jiang Haoyan. Everyone's expression changed, especially Wang Yin, who looked at Qin Feiyang in shock. She never thought that this man would stand up for her and offend Feng Yuan. Looking at Feng Yuan, she also had a look of disbelief. How dare he be presumptuous in front of him? The dignified resource hall master, with a high position and power, actually made things difficult for a disciple. Aren't you afraid of being laughed at? Qin Feiyang sneered. A strand of dense flames of rage instantly appeared in Feng Yuan's eyes. This was clearly provoking him. Jiang Haotian, don't be rude. This is my fault to begin with. It is only right that I be punished. Leave now. Wang Yan's expression suddenly changed and she hurriedly shouted. Qin Feiyang turned a deaf ear and looked at Feng Yuan. If there's anything, come at me. Don't make things difficult for unrelated people. Good. Very good. Very good. Feng Yuan laughed out of extreme anger and said, just based on your actions of offending your superior, it's sufficient for you to die a graveless death. Offend? I just said a few words of justice, and it's called offending. Can't I speak the truth in Ninth Heaven Palace? Qin Feiyang said. What a sharp tongue. However, no matter how eloquent you are, you won't be able to escape punishment today. Now, I will punish you according to the law. Feng Yuan's eyes surged with killing intent. This is bad. Mu Tianyang felt a chill in his heart. Feng Yuan already had a murderous intent, and no one could persuade him otherwise. This guy was really stupid. Knowing that Feng Yuan had been looking for an opportunity to get rid of him, he still took the initiative to bump into him. According to law, but at this moment, a cold voice sounded. Then a woman in a light purple dress slowly walked into the resource hall. It was Shangguan Fenglan. Greetings, Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall. Everyone immediately bowed. Qin Feiyang also quickly released Feng Yuan's wrist and turned to salute Shangguan Fenglan. Feng Yuan raised his eyebrows. Why was it this woman again? Every time he wanted to attack Qin Feiyang, this woman would always jump out and interfere. Hall, Master Feng Yuan, law enforcement is the power of our law enforcement hall. It doesn't seem to have much to do with your resource hall, right? Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Qin Feiyang and smiled at Feng Yuan. Feng Yuan said, Don't I have the right to punish the people of my resource hall who made a mistake? It depends on how you look at it. Privately, they're your subordinates. You do have the right to punish them. But publicly, as long as the disciples of Jiutian Palace, no matter where they are, no matter what mistakes they have made, they should be handed over to my law enforcement hall. Shangguan Fenglan said. Feng Yuan said angrily, Are you deliberately going against me? I wouldn't dare. I just have something to ask Jiang Haotian, but I didn't expect to see this scene. Speaking of which, what exactly made Hall Master Feng Yuan so angry? Shangguan Fenglan looked curious. Feng Yuan's face was gloomy. Qin Feiyang said, Hall Master, this matter was caused by me. It has nothing to do with Senior Sister Wang Yin. Jiang Haotian, shut up. If you say it, it will definitely make Hall Master Feng Yuan angrier. Wang Yin hurriedly transmitted her voice. Don't be afraid. We are disciples of Jiutian Palace, not his slaves. Why should we be bullied by him? Qin Feiyang snorted coldly, looked at Shangguan Fenglan, and said respectfully, Hall Master, this is what happened. The day before yesterday, I went out with Senior Brother Feng Zi and didn't ask Hall Master Feng Yuan in advance, so he was very dissatisfied. But before that, I had taken the initiative to admit my mistake, but Hall Master Feng Yuan just didn't let it go. He even threatened to kill me. Qin Feiyang's face was full of grievance. So it's because of this. Shangguan Fenglan suddenly understood, turned to look at Feng Yuan, and said, This is my idea. Feng Yuan looked at Qin Feiyang coldly, then looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, Jiang Haoyan is a member of my resource hall after all. You let him go out to do things. Out of courtesy and respect, shouldn't you tell me in advance? This is indeed my lack of consideration, but I can't help it. It was the great elder who urged me. I didn't think so much. I also thought that this was just a small matter, but I didn't expect Hall Master Feng Yuan to care so much. Shangguan Fenglan said. The meaning was obvious. If you are unhappy, go find the great elder. Don't use this as a pretext to make a fuss. And he even mocked Feng Yuan. It was such a small matter, yet he was still fussing over it. He was too narrow-minded. Good. Since it's the great elder's order, then I won't say anything more. But Wang Yin, she didn't fulfill her duty to teach the newcomers well, so she can no longer stay in the resource hall. Wang Yin, from now on, you're no longer a member of the resource hall. After handing over the work in your hands, you can leave on your own. After Feng Yuan finished speaking, he turned and walked to the second floor. Wang Yin's face was pale. She never thought that because of such a small mistake, she would be kicked out of the resource hall. Qin Feiyang just blamed himself, although it was frenzy who forced him to go to the far west. In the end, Wang Yin lost her job because of him. What a pitiful person. How about this? I happen to be short of people in the law enforcement department. After the handover, you can report to the law enforcement hall. But just when Qin Feiyang was thinking about how to make it up to Wang Yin, Shangguan Fenglan's voice suddenly sounded. What? Feng Yuan's body stiffened and turned his head to stare at Shangguan Fenglan angrily. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also raised his head and looked at Shangguan Fenglan in surprise. Wang Yun herself had a look of disbelief. Go to the law enforcement hall. One must know that entering the law enforcement hall was more difficult than entering the resource hall. As long as one was smart enough, one would have a chance to enter the resource hall. But the law enforcement hall, not only must one have a strong cultivation base, but also extraordinary courage and loyalty to the Nine Heavens Palace. After all, the people in the law enforcement hall had the power to kill the disciples. In short, it was as difficult as ascending to heaven to enter the law enforcement hall, and the treatment in the law enforcement hall was better than the resource hall. Therefore, the disciples of the Nine Heavens Palace were extremely afraid of the law enforcement hall, but they were also very eager to enter the law enforcement hall. Wang Yin had felt that she had lost hope in life, but she did not expect that immediately after, an even bigger pie would fall down. It made her feel like she was dreaming unreal. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Senior Sister Wang Yin, why don't you quickly thank Hall Master Shangguan? Wang Yin quivered and hurriedly knelt down on one knee, solemnly saying, Thank you, Lord Hall Master. This disciple will be loyal to the death and will not disappoint Lord Hall Master's appreciation. Shangguan Fenglan smiled and said, You have to be loyal to the Nine Heavens Palace, not me. Yes, this disciple will remember. Wang Yin respectfully replied. Shangguan Fenglan said, Get up. Wang Yin got up. The joy on her face could not be concealed. However, there was one person at the scene whose face was extremely ugly. This person was Feng Yuan. After driving Wang Yin out of the resource hall, Shangguan Fenglan immediately took Wang Yin into the law enforcement hall. Wasn't this clearly refuting his face? Stinking woman, just you wait. He secretly snorted coldly, and with a stomach full of anger, He disappeared from the second floor without looking back. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Feng Yuan's back, then looked at Wang Yin and said, "You can hand it over." "Yes." Wang Yin nodded respectfully, turned to look at Qin Feiyang, and smiled. "Junior brother Jiang, let's go and hand it over." Shangguan Fenglan said, "You go and hand it over to someone else. I have something to ask Jiang Haoqian." Wang Yin looked at Shangguan Fenglan in surprise. Mu Tianyang sent a sound transmission. "Brother Hua, this woman doesn't seem to have good eyesight." Indeed. Obviously, Shangguan Fenglan helped him because of Jiang Haoqian, but she didn't see through it. Hua Yi secretly said. Wang Yin indeed didn't see through it at first, but when she heard Shangguan Fenglan's words and thought of how Shangguan Fenglan protected Qin Feiyang before, she immediately understood. She looked at Qin Feiyang gratefully, then turned and walked towards Hui Yi and Mu Tianyang. "Jiang Haoqian, come out," Shangguan Fenglan said, then turned and walked out of the resource hall. Qin Feiyang sighed helplessly and followed with large strides. He didn't need to think to know that Shangguan Fenglan came to find him because of Frenzy and Long Tianyu. Walking out of the resource hall, Qin Feiyang followed Shangguan Fenglan and flew to a nearby mountain peak with no one. Shangguan Fenglan said, "You must have heard about what Frenzy did in Sky Dragon City." "I've heard a little." Qin Feiyang nodded. Shangguan Fenglan said meaningfully, "After receiving my message, he actually didn't bring Long Tianyu back. This shouldn't be simple." "How would I know?" Qin Feiyang was a little innocent. "Keep pretending." Shangguan Fenglan looked at him playfully. "I didn't." Qin Feiyang's face was full of helplessness. Shangguan Fenglan couldn't hold it in anymore and said angrily, "Weren't you the one who told Frenzy not to bring Long Tianyu back?" "When did I inform him?" "Senior brother Frenzy, and I didn't establish a contract bridge." Qin Feiyang said, "You two have known each other for so long, and even went to the far west together. Do you think I will believe that you didn't establish a contract bridge?" Shangguan Fenglan said angrily. "I really didn't. Why don't you believe me?" Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly. "I can believe you if you want. But before evening, you must find Frenzy and Long Tianyu for me. Otherwise, you'll have to bear the consequences." Shangguan Fenglan sneered and flew away like lightning, disappearing from Qin Feiyang's sight. Chapter 2119. Why am I so unlucky? Qin Feiyang stood alone at the peak of the mountain, wanting to cry, but no tears came out. Everything could be related to him. Sigh. Where can I find him? Qin Feiyang sighed and flew towards the resource hall. To find Madman, he had to leave the Nine Heavens Palace. Therefore, he had to inform Feng Yuan in advance, lest he use it as a pretext to make a fuss. Returning to the resource hall, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but be stunned. Everyone was there, but Mu Tianyang was nowhere to be seen. Qin Feiyang walked to Hui Yi's side. Hua Yi and Wang Yin were talking. "Junior brother Jiang, thank you, but I really didn't expect your relationship with Hall Master Shangguan to be so good." Wang Yin smiled gratefully. "I'm just a small disciple. What relationship can I have with her? She must have taken a fancy to your talent to let you enter the law enforcement hall." Qin Feiyang shook his head. Wang Yin was also a smart person. She just smiled and didn't ask any more. Qin Feiyang looked at Hua Yi and asked suspiciously, "Where's Mu Tianyang?" Hua Yi pointed to the second floor and said in a low voice, "After you left, he was called up by Feng Yuan." Qin Feiyang looked at the second floor. Why was he in such a hurry to call Mu Tianyang up? "You guys are busy. I'll go to the second floor too." Qin Feiyang said to the two of them and turned to walk to the second floor. Second floor, in the lounge, Feng Yuan sat beside the tea table, and Mu Tianyang stood respectfully opposite him. Feng Yuan asked, "The day before yesterday, Madman took Jiang Haoqian away from the treasure pavilion. You were there, right?" Mu Tianyang nodded. Feng Yuan said, Then do you know where they went? What did they do? I don't know. I asked Madman at that time, but he didn't reveal anything. Mu Tianyang said. So mysterious? It's really strange. Feng Yuan frowned. Mu Tianyang suddenly said, Hall Master, didn't you ask the Great Elder? This old man never thought that this matter was related to the Great Elder. Since it has something to do with the Great Elder, this matter is definitely not ordinary. That little bastard Jiang Haotian definitely won't tell me the truth. I'll have to rely on you for this matter. This old man will also find an opportunity to sound out the first elder's intentions. Feng Yuan said. Yes. Mu Tianyang nodded. Feng Yuan waved his hand and said, Leave. Mu Tianyang hesitated for a moment and said, Actually, there's something I want to discuss with you. What is it? Feng Yuan was doubtful. Mu Tianyang's gaze flickered slightly and he said, I want to make a trip to the Heavenly Dragon Sea. Why are we going to the Sky Dragon Sea? Feng Yuan was stunned and asked in surprise. Mu Tianyang moved closer to Feng Yuan's ear and whispered a few words. So that's how it is. Feng Yuan came to a realization when he heard that and said with a nod, All right, you arrange this matter well. This old man will also let Wenhai and Jin Yinchang, they all assist you. Many thanks for Hall Master's trust. This time, I'll definitely bury him in the Heavenly Dragon Sea. Mu Tianyang said with a cold smile, If you can really make him die in the Heavenly Dragon Sea, then you'll be this resource hall's next Hall Master. Feng Yuan said. Mu Tianyang was overjoyed and said with a bow, This subordinate definitely won't let down His Excellency Hall Master's expectations. Haha, Feng Yuan laughed loudly and waved his hand, saying, Go and get busy. This subordinate takes his leave. Mu Tianyang bowed and withdrew. After Mu Tianyang withdrew from the lounge, Feng Yuan immediately laughed coldly. Do you really think that this old man will let you be the next resource hall's hall master? Truly an out-and-out fool. When Jiang Haotian dies, that will also be the date of your death. Outside in the corridor, when Mu Tianyang closed the door, he just happened to see Qin Feiyang coming upstairs. What are you running up for now? Mu Tianyang was taken aback and hurriedly walked over. Shangguan Fenglan asked me to find Frenzy and Long Tianyu. What can I do? I can only come and report first. You, on the other hand... Why is Feng Yuan in such a hurry to find you? Qin Feiyang transmitted. Isn't it because he wants to know about you and Frenzy going to the far west land? But I didn't say anything. In addition, I have already obtained his consent. We can set off for the Heavenly Dragon Sea at any time. Mu Tianyang secretly said. He would agree so easily? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Do you understand my methods? Mu Tianyang waved his fist and smiled smugly, then walked straight past Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at Mu Tianyang's back view, a hint of light flickering in the depths of his eyes. Although he and Mu Tianyang were currently in a cooperative relationship, regardless of whether it was him or Mu Tianyang, they were actually well aware of it in their hearts. This kind of relationship could collapse at any time. Therefore, going to the Heavenly Dragon Sea not only had to be careful of Feng Yuan's plot, but also had to be wary of Mu Tianyang. Sigh, this scheming is really tiring. Qin Feiyang suddenly shook his head, turned back, walked to the door and knocked lightly. Come in. Feng Yuan's voice came from inside. Qin Feiyang pushed open the door. Seeing that it was actually Qin Feiyang, Feng Yuan's face immediately turned gloomy and asked, What's the matter? Hall Master, Shangguan Fenglan asked me to find Madman. What do you think we should do? Qin Feiyang said awkwardly. What? She asked you to find Madman. Feng Yuan was stunned. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. Is she sick? There are so many people in the law enforcement hall. Is there a need for you to go? Feng Yuan immediately became angry. I think so too. but she just wants me to go. She even said that if I don't find Madman before evening, I will bear the consequences. Hall Master, why don't you go and intercede for me? I still have a lot of work. How can I leave? Qin Feiyang said helplessly. You really don't want to go? Feng Yuan asked, sizing up Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang nodded and said, I really don't want to go. I'm very curious. Why are you so close to Madman and Shangguan Fenglan? Could it be that there is some kind of unknown relationship between you two? Feng Yuan asked. Qin Feiyang smiled bitterly and said, I knew Hall Master would think so, but I can tell you responsibly that there really isn't. No, you're ignoring me. It doesn't matter. How can they take care of you like this? Feng Yuan sneered. This, Qin Feiyang hesitated and said, There's something I want to say. Don't be angry. Say it, Feng Yuan said. Qin Feiyang lowered his head and said, I think they might not like how you bullied me before. Feng Yuan suddenly slammed his palm on the tea table. Crack! The tea table shattered. Qin Feiyang's body trembled, and he hurriedly said, You said you can't be angry. Feng Yuan smiled coldly and said, After getting along with you for so long, I finally heard the truth from your mouth. How can I be angry? Qin Feiyang was terrified. Get lost, Feng Yuan shouted. Qin Feiyang asked cautiously, Then should I go or not? Shangguan Fenglan has spoken. How can I dare you not go? Get lost! Feng Yuan shouted angrily. Disciple will take his leave, Qin Feiyang said, then turned around and ran out in a hurry. Can't stand me bullying him? Humph! Shangguan Fenglan, lunatic, when did you become so kind? But no one who goes against me will have a good ending. Just like the son of the great elder. Feng Yuan sneered, and the killing intent in his eyes was undisguised. Qin Feiyang walked out of the resource hall and looked up at the sun in the sky. When he thought of Feng Yuan's expression, his mood was incomparably happy. Then he soared into the sky and flew toward the sky stairway. After leaving the Ninth Heaven Palace, he directly opened the portal and descended outside the North City Gate. So cruel, yeah, but it's also very satisfying. The Zhang father and son are usually arrogant and domineering, and I've long been unhappy with them. Isn't that so? And that hedonistic son of the Li family, always acting like a tyrant. He should have been killed long ago. Lunatic really did a good thing this time. With this bloody lesson, let's see if they dare to bully honest people like us in the future. As soon as Qin Feiyang walked to the city gate, he heard countless people talking about Lunatic. Lunatic really made a name for himself this time. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled, but suddenly, behind him, he felt a great sense of danger. Without hesitation, he directly entered the Black Tortoise world. Just as Qin Feiyang disappeared, a black arrow flashed with a shocking sharpness, cutting through the sky like lightning and entering the back of a burly man's head. This burly man was walking in front of Qin Feiyang. The moment Qin Feiyang disappeared, the burly man naturally became a ghost. Ah! Accompanied by a painful scream, the burly man died on the spot. What's going on? The sudden scene caused a crowd at the city gate to be in an uproar. Everyone scanned their surroundings in bewilderment. The 4 guards at the city gate were naturally alarmed. 2 of them immediately rushed over to observe the burly man's situation. This arrow pierced through a sea of consciousness and directly shattered his divine soul. And there's poison on the arrow. Who is it? Who dares to commit murder at the city gate of our Sky Dragon City? The 2 guards scanned the crowd around them. I don't know. We didn't see it either. Just now, we suddenly heard this person scream and then saw him fall to the ground. The few people standing in front opened their mouths. The perpetrator must be among you. From now on, without our orders, no one is allowed to leave. Seal the city gate, the 2 guards shouted. The 2 guards guarding the city gate immediately mobilized their divine power and sealed the city gate. Then they soared into the sky and monitored everyone present. At the same time, Qin Feiyang was also in the Black Tortoise realm, scanning the people on the plains. Only he knew that the perpetrator's target was not the burly man, but him. But he did not find the perpetrator. Everyone present looked very innocent. However, in such a short period of time, this person could not have escaped. He must still be here. But who wanted to kill him? Feng Yuan? Feng Yuan had suffered many losses, so he should not send people to assassinate him again. Moreover, Mu Tianyang had already mentioned to Feng Yuan that he wanted to go to the Sky Dragon Sea. So, even if Feng Yuan wanted to kill him, he would definitely wait until he went to the Sky Dragon Sea before taking action. But other than Feng Yuan, who else could it be? During his time in Sky Dragon City, it seemed that he had only offended Feng Yuan. Chapter 2120. No, there seemed to be Gwisweki. However, Gwisweki was now following Mu Tianyang, so it was not possible to assassinate him. Besides, Gwisweki certainly did not have the courage to do so now. It was a mess outside. The eyes of the 4 guards were filled with piercing cold light. Whoosh! Suddenly, a figure appeared out of thin air. It was Qin Feiyang, its senior brother Jiang. Jiang Haoqian? Why is he here too? I seem to have seen him just now, but I didn't pay much attention to him. Wait a minute. Could he be the one who shot the man in the dark? It's impossible. Why is it impossible? He hid in the space divine object, assassinated the burly man, and then ran out without anyone knowing. The crowd immediately became restless. Hearing these discussions, the 4 guards looked at each other. One of the guards walked up to Qin Feiyang. With a respectful expression, he asked, "May I ask young Master Jiang, when did you arrive here?" Qin Feiyang glanced at everyone and then at the guard. Obviously, the guard was also suspicious of him. This was funny. He was the real victim, but now he was the target of suspicion. No, it seemed that someone was deliberately fanning the flames. He glanced at the crowd again, his eyes flickering. Who just said that he might be the one who shot the man in the dark? If he was really fanning the flames, then the person who said this must be the murderer, because this person wanted to confuse the public and make the scene more chaotic. In this way, he could find a chance to escape. He still remembered the voice. It was very strange, but unfortunately, he did not pay attention to the person who spoke before. Now, if that person did not speak, it would be difficult to find him in the crowd. Seeing that Qin Feiyang was silent, the guard frowned and said, "Young Master Jiang, please answer my question." His suspicion of Qin Feiyang became more and more obvious. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly and he said, "Actually, the arrow just now was aimed at me." What? It was aimed at him? That is to say that burly man died unjustly? The crowd was bewildered and clamorous. The 4 guards also looked at each other. What was going on? Nonsense. You are a disciple of the 9 Heavens Palace. Who would dare to assassinate you? A discordant shout rang out once again. Qin Feiyang immediately looked towards the source of the voice. His eyes instantly locked onto a black-robed, middle-aged man in the crowd. This person was about 40 years old. He was short and had an ordinary appearance. At first glance, it was hard to notice him. However, Qin Feiyang's eyes were shining. The reason for that was because that person's voice was exactly the same as the voice from before. This person had pointed the spearhead at him twice. It was obvious that they wanted to cause chaos. The person who would do such a thing was undoubtedly the culprit. What are you looking at? The middle-aged man was dissatisfied when he saw Qin Feiyang staring at him. Who are you? Why did you assassinate me? Qin Feiyang walked towards the middle-aged man. I'm assassinating you? The middle-aged man was stunned and said angrily, Don't slander me. Qin Feiyong turned a deaf ear and said to himself, "In my memory, I don't seem to have seen you. You should be ordered to assassinate me. Who is this person? What nonsense are you talking about?" The middle-aged man shouted angrily, but he seemed to be a little flustered. What should we do? The 4 guards secretly communicated with each other. Jiang Haoyin doesn't look like he's joking. Maybe it's really that person. Whether it is or not, we can't let the suspect go. Quickly surround him. The 4 of them immediately performed teleportation and landed around the middle-aged man in an instant, surrounding him. "What are you doing? He's slandering me. Do you really believe it?" The middle-aged man saw this, and the panic in his eyes became more obvious. "Do you know? Your acting skills are very bad. Not only are your acting skills bad, but your brain is also very stupid. If you didn't say anything, I definitely wouldn't have noticed you. But you thought you were smart and fanned the flames twice, trying to divert everyone's attention to me. This just happened to expose yourself." Qin Feiyong's face was full of ridicule. "Nonsense, nonsense. Everyone don't believe his nonsense. He's a thief pretending to be a thief." The middle-aged man roared in exasperation. "Who's the thief pretending to be a thief? We'll know soon. I believe everyone has already received the news of what happened in Jiuqian Palace last night." Qin Feiyong laughed. "What happened?" Everyone was suspicious. Suddenly, someone in the crowd said in surprise, "Could it be the matter of killing Ryuko Yang?" "That's right. It's the matter of killing Ryuko Yang. Now many people know that I have a secret technique that can read other people's memories." Qin Feiyong raised the corner of his mouth, looked at the middle-aged man, and sneered. "Do you dare to let me read your memories?" The middle-aged man's panic was immediately exposed. Look, he's panicking. It's really him. There must be someone behind him. Otherwise, why would he dare to assassinate Jiang Haoyin? "Catch him, don't let him escape." Everyone roared. The 4 guards pounced on the middle-aged man at the first moment. "Jiang Haoyin, you're really not easy to deal with. But with these ants, you want to keep me here? Dream on." Seeing this, the middle-aged man no longer concealed his ferocity. Boom! An aura suddenly erupted. He instantly attacked, and the 4 guards had no room to resist and died on the spot. "What? So strong? This aura seems to be a great success, Divine Lord." Seeing the situation, everyone immediately retreated in horror. Qin Feiyong was also quite surprised. "It was actually a great success, Divine Lord. In the future, you must always pay attention to what's behind you, because I will continue to find opportunities to assassinate you." The middle-aged man looked at Qin Feiyong with a sinister smile, and then used teleportation, rushing toward the mountain outside the plain like lightning. "Continue to assassinate me." Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows, and a sneer appeared on his face. Using the walk formula, he quickly chased after him. What? Jiang Haoyin actually chased after him? He's crazy. His opponent is a great success, Divine Lord, and he's just a perfect realm war god. Not to mention whether he can catch up. Even if he does, he'll only be courting death. Everyone was discussing, and they were all in disbelief. This person's guts are too big, isn't it? Isn't Madman in the city? Let's quickly find him. Yes, let's find Madman. Jiang Haoyin is under Madman's protection. When he finds out about this, he'll definitely immediately go to rescue him. Although Madman can save Jiang Haoyin, it's not easy to find him. That's true. This person has changed his appearance since last night and is hiding in Sky Dragon City. Only after killing people will he reveal his identity and then continue to hide. Then what should we do? Jiang Haoyin is a good person. We can't just leave him to die. How about this? Although I don't know what Madman has changed his appearance to, he's definitely in Sky Dragon City now. Let's quickly spread the news. When Madman receives the news, he'll naturally immediately go to rescue Jiang Haotian. Yes, 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 everyone, let's be quick. For a moment, the people outside the city took out their image crystals and spread the news. 1 spread to 10. 10 spread to 100. Not long after, not only did the news spread throughout Sky Dragon City, but it also spread to Ninth Heaven Palace. What? He's being assassinated? Resource Hall. Mu Tianyang and Hua Yi looked at each other. No matter where he went, there were people who wanted to kill him. Was this person born to be hated? Treasure Hall. Shangguan Qiu, who was sitting in the study, heard the news and suddenly stood up and shouted, "Men!" A guard ran in. Shangguan Qiu said in a deep voice, "Immediately bring people to rescue Jiang Haotian. Remember, he must not die." "Yes." The guard responded respectfully. Then, with a flash, he disappeared without a trace. Sky Dragon City. On a certain street, an old man with mottled white hair walked shakily with a walking stick in his hand. His old eyes were cloudy, but if one looked closely, there was a shocking sharpness in those cloudy eyes. He scanned the people on the street like a hunter looking for prey. Beside him, there was a teenager who was wearing tattered clothes and had some dirt on his face. The teenager supported the old man and listened to the people's discussion. He whispered, "Brother Crazy, are they talking about Brother Haotian? Who else could it be other than this unlucky guy?" The old man chuckled. The teenager was shocked and quickly asked, "Aren't we going to save him?" "Save him? Kid, you're underestimating him. A mere large success divine, Lord is not a threat to him," the old man said and looked at a restaurant next to him. He laughed hoarsely and said, "Let's go in that restaurant and see if we can find prey. Now that everyone knows that we're hiding in Sky Dragon City, they shouldn't be able to find us." The teenager mumbled, "That's not necessarily true. What if there are a few people who aren't afraid of death?" The old man said with a smile, "Outside North City, deep in the mountains, 2 figures, one in front and one behind, flew across the sky. It was Qin Feiyang and the middle-aged man." So fast." The middle-aged man turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang. A look of surprise flashed across his eyes. But then, a cold smile appeared on his face, and he mumbled, "Have they caught up? Just what I want." He scanned the mountains and rivers in front of him and suddenly turned in the air and flew to the left. Behind, Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed slightly. He also changed his direction and continued to chase. Chapter 21:21. About half an hour passed. Even the 2 of them didn't know how far they had gone into the mountains. Finally, the middle-aged man stopped in the void. In the mountains below, there are countless beasts. Many of them were monarch god-level beasts. But the middle-aged man didn't care about them at all. He slowly turned around and looked at Qin Feiyang. And Qin Feiyang had also stopped. Their eyes met, and invisible sparks seemed to collide in the void. Qin Feiyang said, "Can you tell me now? Who sent you? When you go to hell, the king of hell will tell you." The middle-aged man smiled sinisterly. With a flash, he instantly landed in front of Qin Feiyang and slammed his palm toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang moved his feet and activated the Xing character art, calmly dodging. And he used a thunderous method. A wisp of blood-red light streaked across the sky and instantly arrived in front of the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man's expression changed, and he quickly dodged to the side. Puff! The blood-red light was like a sharp arrow, sinking into the middle-aged man's left shoulder, and a bloody hole appeared. Blood spurted out like a fountain. "What is this? It can actually hurt me." The middle-aged man lowered his head and looked at the bloody hole in his shoulder, his face full of disbelief. One had to know. He was a monarch god, and the other party was just a mere perfection war god. Even if he had a legendary level deity art, he couldn't hurt him, because deity art was a barrier that couldn't break through to the next realm. In other words, Even a beginner monarch god could easily kill a perfection war god. And now, instead he was injured. Qin Feiyang said indifferently, "Do you think I dare to chase after you without any ability? To tell you the truth, countless monarch god have died in my hands." These words were not false. A few days ago in the land of the far west, he had indeed killed many monarch god puppets. However, although he looked calm on the surface, he was actually very vigilant, because puppets and living people were two completely different concepts. Puppets were controlled by people and didn't have thoughts, but living people not only had their own thoughts, but they could also use deity arts and activate their fighting soul, and they might even have a powerful deity weapon. So you are confident, but I have to admit it's really amazing. But today you will still die, the middle-aged man shouted. Divine power rolled out, and a barrier was formed, enveloping Qin Feiyang. Following closely, the middle-aged man formed a seal with both hands, and a palm-sized square seal appeared. The square seal was golden in color, and there was a white tiger engraved at the bottom. It exuded a powerful aura. Let's see how you're going to hide now. Perfect deity technique. Tiger taming seal. As soon as the middle-aged man finished speaking, the taming tiger seal shot up into the sky and expanded in size. In an instant, it was like a towering mountain. Golden light shone in all directions, releasing an aura that could destroy the world. Kill! A murderous aura erupted from his body. He waved his hand, and the taming tiger seal came crashing down. Perfect deity formula. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. This was the difference between a living person and a puppet. For example, the person in front of him could pose a fatal threat to him just by relying on the cultivation of a large success divine lord and the perfect divine art. However, since he dared to come, he must have some confidence. Clang! Murderous aura rolled out from his palm, accompanied by an earth-shattering sound. A blood-red sword appeared in the sky. He grabbed the blood-red sword and slashed at the air. However, his target was not the taming tiger seal. It was the barrier that trapped him. The middle-aged man had set up the barrier to prevent him from escaping. As long as the barrier was broken, it would not be difficult for him to dodge the taming tiger seal with the deity formula. Crack! The blood-red sword's radiance tore through the sky. There was no suspense. The barrier was shattered on the spot. Immediately after, Qin Feiyang used the deity formula and disappeared from the spot in an instant. Boom! The taming tiger seal came crashing down. The void was instantly destroyed, and the ground below collapsed and sank. What? It shattered my barrier so easily? The middle-aged man was tongue-tied again. The blood-red sword, what was that? How could it have such terrifying destructive power? Clang! Just as the middle-aged man was in a daze, a blood-red sword aura came from behind him. The middle-aged man shuddered and dodged to the side without hesitation. However, the speed of the sword aura was beyond his imagination. His left arm, which was already injured, was directly cut off as the sword energy fell. Ah! The heart-wrenching pain made the middle-aged man scream, like a pig being slaughtered. If you have the ability, don't hide. Fight me head-on. The middle-aged man turned around and glared at Qin Feiyang, who was standing in the air opposite him. Your cultivation is so much higher than mine, and you still want me to fight you head-on? Is there something wrong with your brain? Qin Feiyang sneered. The middle-aged man was burning with anger. That's right. His cultivation was a few levels higher than his opponent's. Moreover, there was the huge gap between the god of war and the divine lord. However, in these few rounds, he was the one who was injured. What about his opponent? He was unharmed. If it was anyone else, they would not be able to endure such humiliation. Boom! The middle-aged man's body trembled. An even more terrifying aura broke out from his body. What? Qin Feiyang was shocked. This person was not a great success, divine lord. Yes, This is my true strength, great perfection, divine Lord. The middle-aged man grinned again and again, his aura fully released. This level of aura, Qin Feiyang was not unfamiliar at all. This was a great perfection, divine Lord. Do you know why I hid my cultivation? It's because I want to lure you here so that I can kill you without anyone knowing. The middle-aged man laughed. Who the hell are you? Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice. Ha ha, it hasn't been long since the last time we met. Have you forgotten me? The middle-aged man took out a facial restoration pill. Qin Feiyang looked at the facial restoration pill and then looked at the middle-aged man. It hasn't been long since the last time we met? Let me give you a hint. Martial arts treasury. The middle-aged man said. Martial arts treasury. Qin Feiyang's eyes trembled and said in surprise, You are Nie Kong. The middle-aged man smiled without saying a word and took the facial restoration pill in his hand. Very soon, a familiar face appeared in Qin Feiyang's line of sight. Who else could it be but Nie Kong? I see. You were afraid of arousing the lunatic's dissatisfaction, so you changed your appearance and came to assassinate me. After the assassination failed, you hid your cultivation and lured me here. In order to kill me, you really used all kinds of tricks. Qin Feiyang said. That's right. When I tried to assassinate you, I thought I could succeed, but I didn't expect you to be so vigilant. You even managed to dig him out. However, I was unwilling, so I came up with this idea at the last minute. Because I expected that with your conceit and arrogance, you would definitely come after me. Sure enough, you came after me. Do you still remember what I said back then? I will definitely avenge my brother, my father, my grandfather, and my family. And today is the day you die. Nie Kong's face was full of resentment and once again evolved the perfect divine art, tiger taming seal. Without hiding his cultivation, the power of the tiger taming seal reached its peak state. Feeling the aura of the tiger taming seal at this moment, Qin Feiyang's heart did not have any luck. He was afraid that even the blood-colored long sword could not match it, because Nie Kong's cultivation was one realm higher than his. He could only activate the slaughter zone. But now, it was too late to activate the slaughter zone. After all, there was no ready-made blood. Moreover, as early as the beginning of his fight with Nie Kong, the beasts in the mountains below had already fled upon hearing the news. In other words, at this moment, within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles, there was only him and Nie Kong. Are you afraid? Are you desperate? This is what you deserve. Nie Kong laughed. Qin Feiyang said in a deep voice, I have already said that your father and the rest were not killed by me. Besides you, who else could it be? Actually, after the bet with you last time, I also thought about it carefully. With your cultivation, it should be impossible to kill my Nie family. Because of this, I hesitated for a long time. However, just earlier, when I saw that trace of crimson light and the long sword in your hand, I finally understood that you do have the ability to do so. So, the executioner who slaughtered my Nie family is definitely you. Go and be buried with them. Nie Kong roared. The tiger taming seal descended from the sky, carrying the power to destroy the world. It shattered the sky for hundreds of thousands of miles and headed towards Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang did not dare to be the slightest bit careless. He hurriedly used the walk formula and quickly dodged. The tiger taming seal blasted into the ground below. The air billowed. In an instant, everything within the range visible to the naked eye was razed to the ground. Qin Feiyang's back was drenched in cold sweat. If he did not dodge, then he would definitely be a corpse now. No, I'm afraid that not even a corpse would be left. You think you are the only one who has mastered the auxiliary divine technique? Without waiting for Qin Feiyang to recover, Nie Kong's angry roar sounded again. Qin Feiyang was shocked and hurriedly looked over. He saw Nie Kong using a strange and unpredictable footwork rushing towards him. Compared to his previous speed, it was on a completely different level. Perfect auxiliary divine technique. Ghost steps. Nya Kong laughed sinisterly. It could be said that his current speed was even faster than Qin Feiyang's walk formula. It was not to say that Qin Feiyang's walk formula was inferior to Nya Kong's ghost steps. It was because Nya Kong's cultivation was too much higher than Qin Feiyang's. How could Qin Feiyang compare with the cultivation of a consummate Sir God and the perfect auxiliary divine technique? This time, he also truly experienced the difference between a puppet and a living person. They were completely incomparable. Chapter 21-22. He could kill puppets in seconds as if he was cutting vegetables. But for a living person, unless it was an unexpected assassination, he had no chance of winning. In the blink of an eye, die. Nya Kong laughed sinisterly. The tiger taming seal appeared again and blasted toward Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang's heart sank. He held the blood-colored sword in his hand and attacked. He definitely could not avoid it. As Nya Kong's speed was faster than his, he could only give it his all. As for the ancient castle and the Black Tortoise realm, he did not intend to enter them. If he did not get rid of a powerful enemy like Nya Kong as soon as possible, there would be endless trouble in the future. Therefore, no matter what, he had to kill this person today. Even if the purple-gold dragon blood was exposed, he would not hesitate. Clang! Clang! Accompanied by an earth-shattering sound, the blood-colored sky and the tiger taming seal met. True enough, the blood-colored sword shattered instantly. As for the tiger taming seal, there was only a crack. And this crack was difficult to see with the naked eye. This was a completely overwhelming situation. The tiger taming seal was full of murderous intent as it charged toward Qin Feiyang. In the nick of time, Qin Feiyang quickly activated the battle word manual. Once the blood-colored armor appeared, the tiger taming seal blasted onto Qin Feiyang. Uft! Qin Feiyang spat out a mouthful of blood on the spot. Like a meteorite, he smashed into the ground below. As for the armor formed by the battle word manual, it shattered into pieces. Too powerful. This is the strength of a perfected Sir God. Compared to this, the puppets are too weak. Qin Feiyang muttered. Not only was the armor shattered, but his entire chest was also caved in. His bones were broken, and his flesh was badly mangled. Even his internal organs were fatally injured. It turns out that without Lunatic's protection, you are just a piece of trash. Nya Kong's face was full of disdain. But suddenly, he noticed the blood that Qin Feiyang spat out, and his eyes widened. What was going on? Why was the blood purple gold? He went forward in shock and took a closer look. His body trembled. It actually had a dragon's aura. This is the legendary purple gold dragon blood. Nya Kong's face was filled with disbelief. How could there be purple gold dragon blood flowing in this person's body? It was passed down from generation to generation. 7,000 to 8,000 years ago, there was also a human with purple golden dragon blood flowing through his veins. This person was the monstrous genius who was famous in the northern region at that time, but then disappeared. Until now, he was almost forgotten by people. Qin Batian. Nya Kong looked up at Qin Feiyang, who was slowly standing up, and asked in surprise, "What is your relationship with Qin Batian?" "He is my ancestor." Qin Feiyang grinned. "Your ancestor?" Nya Kong was extremely surprised. It seems that my ancestor was quite famous in the northern region back then. No matter who it is, they all know of his existence. Qin Feiyang said, "Although the name Qin Batian has disappeared for thousands of years, many people still remember it, especially those from our Nine Heavens Palace. But it's really surprising that you're actually his descendant. But you still can't avoid death." Fighting Soul open. Nya Kong laughed sinisterly. With a low roar, a golden domain appeared out of nowhere. As soon as the domain appeared, It was infinitely enlarged and enveloped Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang suddenly felt an invisible force pressing down on him. His cultivation instantly dropped by a small realm. Qin Feiyang was shocked. This is my body talent. It can deprive the opponent of a small realm of cultivation. Now that your cultivation has dropped to perfect war god, you have no chance of winning. Obediently accept your death, so that you won't suffer any physical pain. But in the end, I'll let you see my true strength. Nye Kong laughed arrogantly. He placed his hands in front of his chest and quickly formed seals. First, a golden square seal appeared. It was the tiger seal. Immediately after, another golden square seal appeared. At the bottom, there was a living golden dragon. Tiger seal, dragon seal. These two deity skills are my strongest techniques. It's your honor to die under these two deity skills. Now you can go to hell, Nye Kong said proudly. Then, killing intent burst out from his eyes. The two divine seals cut through the sky like two mountains, one in front and one behind, attacking Qin Feiyang. That terrifying oppressive force caused Qin Feiyang to practically be unable to breathe. Sigh. However, there was a trace of regret on his face. He sighed. I never thought of killing you. If you didn't take the initiative to provoke me, I would have even forgotten about your existence. Why? Are you trying to gain sympathy? Nye Kong sneered. Sympathy? I'm not trying to gain your sympathy. I'm sympathizing with you. Isn't it good to be alive? Do you have to court death? Qin Feiyang said. Haha. At this point, you still dare to be so arrogant. You're really stupid. Nye Kong laughed again and again. His face was full of contempt. Sigh. Qin Feiyang shook his head and sighed. He muttered, Although I don't want to rely on you, there's no other way. Please make your move. Shua. As Qin Feiyang's voice fell, a gray figure swept out from his body. It was the spirit of the gray castle. Nye Kong looked at the spirit in surprise, because the moment the artifact spirit appeared, he felt a great sense of danger. The spirit still couldn't see its face, but the disdain for Nye Kong, whether it was Qin Feiyang or Nye Kong himself, they could clearly feel it. The spirit raised its hand and pointed in the air. Boom! A force of death suddenly roared out. Kacha! The tiger subduing seal and dragon subduing seal shattered in an instant. What? Nye Kong was dumbfounded. When he came back to his senses, he quickly turned around and fled. His previous arrogance was gone, and his face was full of fear. His perfect divine technique was shattered so easily. How strong was this person? Qin Feiyang shouted, Don't let him escape! Nye Kong already knew his true identity. Once Nye Kong escaped, he would definitely report it to the higher-ups of Ninth Heaven Palace. If I can't even keep such a small character, then what qualifications do I have to accompany you to the Sky Dragon Sea to find Qin Batian and Lu Zhangyang? The spirit sneered. The force of death suddenly turned into waves, sweeping across the sky and quickly drowning Nye Kong. My life force, my divine soul. Damn it, what the hell is this? I can't accept this. Nye Kong roared angrily. His body shriveled at a speed visible to the naked eye, and in 3 breaths, his life force completely disappeared. Only skin and bones remained of his physical body as he fell to the ground. This kind of trash doesn't even have the qualifications to be my puppet, the spirit said disdainfully. With a wave of its arm, the force of death retreated back into its body like a tide. Qin Feiyang swallowed a divine life pill and looked at the spirit with a smile. Strong enough? Of course. The spirit smiled proudly, then asked in confusion, Why didn't you activate the slaughter domain just now? I wanted to, but you also saw that there is not a single murder nearby. Qin Feiyang said helplessly, Anyway, no matter what, he must not let the spirit know that the slaughter domain had a time limit. Although your slaughter domain is heaven-defying, its drawbacks are obvious. In a battle of life and death, the opponent will not give you the chance to absorb blood. The spirit said. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled. Under normal circumstances, I will not activate the slaughter domain. Indeed, it is a little too bloody. All right, the matter has been settled. I will leave first. After saying that, the spirit returned to Qin Feiyang's Qi. Phew! Qin Feiyang let out a long breath. The people of the Nie family were finally all eliminated, and there was one less threat in the future. He stepped forward and landed in front of Nie Kong's body. He took Nie Kong's yin and yang ring, and a smile appeared on his face. This Nie Kong's family was really rich. There were all kinds of elixirs. For example, there were hundreds of divine life pills. There were at least billions of divine gems and more than 100 million soul stones. A large part of the 100 million soul stones should be what he gave to Nie Kong. At that time, he used 100 million soul stones to exchange for the soul-gathering divine technique with Nie Kong. Originally, Nie Kong could have enjoyed the 100 million soul stones. But unfortunately, because of his stupidity, it was now back in Qin Feiyang's hands. Sure enough, it's like the old saying, it's you who can't run away, not you who can't force it. Qin Feiyang gladly put away the yin and yang ring, and then immersed his mind into Nie Kong's body. This Nie Kong must have a divine artifact. In the end, he really found a divine artifact in Nie Kong's Qi, but it was only a high-grade divine artifact. No wonder Nie Kong did not take it out before. After all, a high-grade divine artifact was not very helpful to a perfect Sir God. Qin Feiyang was too lazy to take it, and casually threw it into the yin and yang ring. Be a good person in your next life. Looking at Nie Kong's body, Qin Feiyang muttered. With a wave of his hand, the soil rolled and buried Nie Kong's body. He then entered the black tortoise world, washed the bloodstains on his body, changed into a clean set of clothes, and flew back to Sky Dragon City. Do you think that madman went to save Jiang Haotian? Although I didn't see madman, with his relationship with Jiang Haotian, he should have gone. Moreover, now that this matter has spread to Nine Heavens Palace, the upper echelons of Nine Heavens Palace will definitely not sit back and do nothing. That might not be the case. Don't you know how Nine Heavens Palace works? Once a disciple leaves Nine Heavens Palace, no matter what difficulties they encounter, they will not help. This Jiang Haotian is a good person. It would be a pity if he died like this. Yes. Back then, when Feng Wenhai framed him, he was still able to let bygones be bygones and forgive Feng Wenhai. It can be seen how kind he is. I just don't understand, such a kind child. Why are there so many people who want to harm him? You don't know. A kind person will be bullied. Outside the North City Gate, at this moment, there was a sea of people. Everyone looked at the mountain in front of them and discussed. Time passed little by little. Suddenly, a white figure flew out from the mountain and gradually appeared in front of everyone. That is Jiang Haotian. He's not dead. Wait, why don't I see Madman? Did he not go? If Madman didn't go, then how did he escape back? Everyone quickly went up to greet him. Qin Feiyang looked at the vast and mighty crowd with a stunned expression. He was too popular now. Chapter 21-23. When did he receive such treatment in the great Qin Empire and forgotten continent? He was either scolded or hunted down. Of course, he had to thank the Feng family. It was the Feng family that made him who he was today. During this period of fighting with the Feng family, not only did he gain enough benefits, but he also gained a good reputation. It could be said that he gained both fame and fortune. Qin Feiyang flew over and said shamefully, "What did I do to deserve everyone's concern?" "Child, don't say that. We know that you are a good person. Some people just can't bear to see others doing well, so they always play tricks behind their backs. Don't worry, no matter what happens. We will support you from behind." Everyone laughed. Thank you. Qin Feiyang bowed deeply to everyone. You're welcome. Actually, we can't help you much. We can only support you mentally. Back to the topic. How did you escape back? Everyone was curious. Escape back? Qin Feiyang was stunned. After thinking carefully, he suddenly understood. Indeed, Nie Kong's cultivation was much higher than his. It was normal for him to think that he escaped back. That person's speed was too fast. I lost him after chasing him out of the plains. Thinking about it, I really overestimated myself. I actually chased after a great perfection, Divine Lord. Even if I could catch up with him, I was not his match. Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled bitterly. A perfect divine Lord died in the hands of a perfect divine Lord. If this matter were to spread out, how shocking would it be? Therefore, he still had to hide it. So that's how it is. You were indeed a little too impulsive at that time. Don't do this again in the future. Fortunately, that person had some reservations. Otherwise, you would definitely be in trouble this time. Everyone advised. I will remember. Thank you again for your concern. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled. All right then, let's disperse. It's a pity that those 4 guards died too innocently. Everyone shook their heads and sighed. Guards! Qin Feiyang looked down and soon saw the corpses of the 4 guards outside the city gate. Whoosh! Qin Feiyang flickered and landed in front of the 4 corpses. He fell silent for a moment. Don't blame yourself. This is not your fault. The fault lies with the perpetrator. Sooner or later, he will suffer retribution. A few people beside him consoled him. Qin Feiyang sighed. He turned to look at the crowd and asked, Do any of you know their families? Everyone shook their heads. I know him. Also, I've already informed their families. They should be here soon. A black-clothed man said. Qin Feiyang looked at the black-clothed man and nodded. Fu Yong, not long after. A sorrowful cry rang out from within the city. Following closely, a group of people rushed out of the city gate. There were women, children, and the elderly. Everyone's face was filled with grief. A group of people rushed out of the city gate and headed straight here. Qin Feiyang and the others stepped aside. They are the family of these 4 people. They are old and young at home. How pitiful! The black-clothed man sighed. The others also had sympathetic looks on their faces. Fu Yong, why are you sleeping? Get up. Don't leave me and the children behind. What will we do in the future? Who the hell is it? How could he be so cruel? A few women lay on the bodies of the 4 guards, crying to the heavens and the earth, becoming a person of tears. The elderly and children next to them were also crying silently. Qin Feiyang looked at the group of people and couldn't help but sigh. He transmitted his voice. Old Zhao, prepare 4 Qinkuan bags for me. Each Qinkuan bag contains 10 million soul stones. Understood. Zhao Tailai replied. Soon. Zhao Tailai did it. Qin Feiyang walked forward, looked at the 4 women and said, For sisters-in-law, please restrain your grief. Jiang Haotian. The 4 women looked up at Qin Feiyang. They hadn't noticed him before. When the children saw Qin Feiyang, besides sadness, there was also a trace of worship in their eyes. This matter happened because of me. I really don't know how to make it up to you. There are 10 million soul stones in each of these 4 Qinkuan bags. Take it as my apology to you. If you need any help in the future, you can come to the 9 Heavens Palace to find me. As long as it's within my ability, I won't refuse. Qin Feiyang said as he took out the 4 Qinkuan bags and stuffed them into the hands of the 4 women. What? 10 million soul stones? The 4 women were all dumbfounded. The family members beside them also had looks of disbelief. 10 million soul stones was nothing to Qin Feiyang, but for such an ordinary family it was a huge sum of money. They probably wouldn't be able to earn so much in their lifetime. The people around were all dumbfounded. 10 million in one go. The four families added up to a total of 40 million. Wasn't this a little too generous? My condolences. Qin Feiyang smiled at the four women and turned to enter the city. Young Master Jiang, this is too much. We can't take it. The four women came back to their senses and hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyang's back. Qin Feiyang didn't respond and disappeared into the crowd without looking back. The four women looked at each other, completely at a loss for what to do. This is Jiang Haotian's goodwill. Just accept it. Moreover, you all have children. These soul stones can be left to your children. That's right. With these soul stones, your children will definitely become outstanding in the future. The people around them laughed. The four women looked at each other, looked at the city gratefully, and finally put away the Qinkuan bags. Actually, soul stones aren't much. What? 10 million soul stones aren't much? Are you dreaming? Of course not. Actually, the most important thing is Jiang Haotian's final promise. Jiang Haotian said that if these four families need help in the future, they can go to the Empyrean Palace to find him. Do you think that such a promise is not worth 10 million soul stones? That makes sense. This is Jiang Haotian's promise. Not to mention 10 million soul stones. Even 100 million soul stones might not be worth it. This Jiang Haotian is really a good person. I really admire him. In the future, if anyone dares to plot against him, they will be going against us. Yes, we must protect such a good person. The people exclaimed. Qin Feiyang's actions this time won the hearts of the people. When the news spread, countless people praised him. The treasure pavilion. In a study, Shangguan Qiu looked at Qin Feiyang standing outside the door with a surprised expression and said, "What wind blew today? Why did it blow you here?" Qin Feiyang entered the VIP room and said with a smile, "I didn't expect Miss Shangguan to like to joke." "Ha!" Shangguan Qiu laughed dryly and pointed to the tea table beside him. He said with a smile, "Please take a seat." Qin Feiyang did not stand on ceremony. He walked over and sat on the chair. "You don't come here without a reason. What do you need? Tell me." As Shangguan Qiu spoke, he took out a can of tea leaves from the cabinet beside him. When Shangguan Qiu opened the lid, a whiff of fragrance immediately rushed to his nose. This is... Qin Feiyang's eyes lit up. The fragrance of the tea leaves was exactly the same as the tea leaves that the deputy pavilion leader had given him. The deputy pavilion leader gave this to me some time ago. He said that you like tea, so he told me that whenever you come to the treasure pavilion, I must serve you with this tea. Others don't get such treatment. Shangguan Qiu said with a smile. Then shouldn't I feel honored? Qin Feiyang said. Of course. The deputy pavilion leader's tea leaves are priceless. Even the 10 elders of the Empyrean Palace don't have a chance to taste it. Shangguan Qiu said with a proud smile. I'm really flattered. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. At this moment, a guard ran in hurriedly. When he saw Qin Feiyang, he was stunned. What's wrong? Qin Feiyang looked at the guard suspiciously. The guard came back to his senses and waved his hand with a smile. Nothing, nothing. Steward, since young Master Jiang has escaped safely, I'll take my leave. Okay. Shangguan Qiu nodded. The guard turned and left, closing the door behind him. Qin Feiyang looked at Shangguan Qiu in confusion and asked, Steward, what's going on? I heard that you were attacked not long ago. I was a little worried, so I asked him to bring some people to see if he could help you. Apparently my worries were unnecessary. Shangguan Qiu said. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He did not expect Shangguan Qiu to care about him so much. Don't get me wrong. I care about you because you're now the treasure school's patron. Shangguan Qiu said. Haha, Qin Feiyang smiled and said, even if that's the case, I can still brag about it for a while. Shangguan Qiu rolled his eyes and said, Tell me, what's the matter? I want to find lunatic. Help me, Qin Feiyang said. Find lunatic? Shangguan Qiu was stunned and frowned. Aren't you close to him? Why do you need my help? It's a long story. Anyway, I have to find him before dark. You have many spies in the treasure school. Help me, Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Qiu looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously and nodded. Okay, men. The guard pushed the door open and entered again. Shangguan Qiu said, Bring some people to find lunatic. Yes. The guard answered respectfully and turned to leave quickly. Shangguan Qiu looked away and asked Qin Feiyang, Is there anything else? Yes. You haven't replied to me about the divine dragon's soul, the ultimate spirit lotus, and the dragon god's flower last time. Qin Feiyang said, I've asked my master and the deputy pavilion leader about this, but they haven't given me any orders yet, so I can't make a decision on my own. Shangguan Qiu said apologetically. Qin Feiyang was a little depressed. He said, Is it really that difficult? The dragon god's flower and the ultimate spirit lotus are small matters. I can give them to you now. But the dragon's soul, to be honest, is not a child's play. Shangguan Qiu sighed. Chapter 21-24. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. Although the divine dragon was indeed noble and rare, it was nothing to the treasure pavilion. Shangguan Qiu fell silent. Qin Feiyang observed for a while and asked, Is there anything you can't tell us? Sigh. Shangguan Qiu sighed and shook his head. It's not anything I can't tell you. It's just that many people don't know about the dragons. Dragons? Qin Feiyang was surprised. Yes, dragons. That's a super terrifying existence. Even the treasure pavilion can't afford to offend them. Shangguan Qiu said. Dragons, Qin Feiyang frowned. This was the first time he had heard of this term. It's really inconvenient for me to reveal anything about the dragons. Moreover, I don't know much about them. If there's a chance, you can ask the deputy pavilion master. Shangguan Qiu said. Qin Feiyang asked, Does anyone in the Ninth Heaven Palace know about this so-called dragons? Of course. For example, my sister, Feng Yuan, the 10 great elders, the palace master, and the deputy palace master know about them. But you'd better not ask around because the dragons are also a taboo. Shangguan Qiu said in a low voice. Taboo. Qin Feiyang was shocked. It seemed that the dragons were extraordinarily terrifying. Otherwise, the treasure pavilion and the Ninth Heaven Palace would not be so wary of them. Shangguan Qiu pondered for a while and suddenly said, Actually, there are dragon souls. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Shangguan Qiu looked at Qin Feiyang and said, The treasure pavilion has ready-made dragon souls. Ready-made dragon souls? Qin Feiyang was stunned. Yes. After all, the treasure pavilion has been around for a long time. Although we haven't hunted divine dragons, many people have brought dragon souls to trade with us, and we've bought all these dragon souls. They're now kept in the treasure pavilion. Shangguan Qiu said. Qin Feiyang frowned and said, Since there are ready-made ones, then there is no need to hunt anymore. What are you afraid of? Because you are using the dragon soul to refine pills. This kind of offensive behavior will anger the dragons. Once they receive the news, not only will it bring you trouble, even our treasure pavilion will be implicated. Shangguan Qiu said. I see. Qin Feiyang nodded. Shangguan Qiu thought for a moment and asked, Should I ask the deputy pavilion master again? All right, Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Qiu took out the image crystal. Very soon, a white-haired old man appeared. The old man sat on a chair with a walking stick beside him. There was a kind smile on his aged face. Greetings, Vice Pavilion Master. Greetings, Senior. Qin Feiyang and Shangguan Qiu stood up and bowed at the same time. Little friend, you're here too. The Vice Pavilion Master looked at Qin Feiyang and smiled. Qin Feiyang said respectfully, Senior, please forgive us for disturbing your cultivation. It's okay. The Vice Pavilion Master waved his hand and said with a smile, You asked little Chiu to send a message to me. It must be about the dragon's soul, right? Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. The Vice Pavilion Master fell silent. Qin Feiyang said, If this matter really makes things difficult for you, just pretend that I didn't say anything. The Vice Pavilion Master laughed hoarsely and said, This matter is indeed a little difficult, but I really can't bear to refuse your request. Qin Feiyang was delighted. The Vice Pavilion Master said, But I have a request. Please say it. Qin Feiyang said. The Vice Pavilion Master said, You must not mention the fact that you used the dragon's soul to refine pills to outsiders. Even if you die, you must keep it to yourself. No problem. I can guarantee it. Qin Feiyang nodded without hesitation. In fact, even if the Vice Pavilion Master did not say anything, he would not take out the dragon's soul, primordial spirit pill. That was because this kind of pill was too shocking. Once it was exposed, there would be endless trouble. The Vice Pavilion Master said with a smile, I still believe in your promise. Little Chiu, you can make the deal with him. Yes. Shangguan Chiu replied respectfully. The Vice Pavilion Master looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Then let's have tea together when we have time. Okay. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. The Vice Pavilion Master's shadow disappeared. Shangguan Chiu put away the image crystal and looked at Qin Feiyang. Is there something on my face? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. I'm just puzzled. Did you drug the Vice Pavilion Master? He actually helped you so much? Shangguan Chiu frowned. Ha, this is charm, Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Shameless. Shangguan Chiu rolled his eyes and said, Since the Vice Pavilion Master has spoken, then let's talk. There's no need to talk. You can name the price. I only have one request, the more the better, Qin Feiyang said. Do you think dragon souls are cabbages that can be picked up from the ground? Shangguan Chiu was speechless. 10 million, 10 million. This Jiang Haoyan is really generous. Jiutian Palace, outer sect. Inside a cave. Gao Xiaolong was amazed. Next to him, Gao Xiaohui said with a smile, Big Brother Jiang is a very generous person. Otherwise he would not have helped us. Gao Xiaolong looked at Gao Xiaohui and found that there was an inexplicable emotion in her eyes. He said, Xiaohui, are you interested in Jiang Haotian? Gao Xiaohui was stunned and said, Brother, what are you talking about? Girl, I've watched you grow up. Do you think you can hide your thoughts from me? Gao Xiaolong said. I'm not. Gao Xiaohui lowered her head and couldn't help but blush. If you're not, why are you blushing? But thinking about it, a capable person like Jiang Haotian is indeed very attractive to girls like you. Gao Xiaolong laughed. Gao Xiaohui's face turned even redder. Especially the way Gao Xiaolong looked at her made her feel uncomfortable. Looks like my little girl is really in love. Gao Xiaolong laughed. Brother. Gao Xiaohui looked at Gao Xiaolong coquettishly. Okay. I'm not joking. But there's something I have to say to you. You have the right to like Jiang Haotian. I can't do anything about it. But I want to say don't have too much hope. Because Jiang Haotian is not from the same world as us. His future achievements are something we can never reach. Do you understand? Gao Xiaolong said. I know. Gao Xiaohui nodded, and a trace of disappointment appeared on her face. It's good that you know. Gao Xiaolong nodded and comforted her. Of course, this kind of thing depends on fate. If you and him are fated, then no matter how big the gap between you two is, you can still walk together. In any case, let nature take its course. Gao Xiaohui pouted. That's right. Let nature take its course, don't force it. Gao Xiaolong said. Gao Xiaowei nodded. Time flew by. In the afternoon, Qin Feiyang followed behind the guard and quickly walked out of the treasure pavilion. His face was full of smiles, as if he was bathing in the spring breeze. The guard asked curiously, "Young Master Jiang, what did you talk about with the steward that made you so happy?" "It's a secret." Qin Feiyang smiled mysteriously. "Where's Frenzy?" "He's in a restaurant, disguised as an old man. Our people have been keeping an eye on him." The guard said, "Good. Activate the altar immediately." Qin Feiyang said, "Activate the altar?" The guard was stunned, shaking his head. "There's no need for that. It's very close." Qin Feiyang laughed. "With Frenzy's ability, your treasure pavilion's people won't be able to keep an eye on him. So we need to race against time." "That's true." The guard nodded. "Activating a transmission altar. Since it's a direct transmission, there's no need for me to lead the way. I won't cause trouble for you." "Okay, thank you." Qin Feiyang stepped onto the altar. The guard smiled. "You're too polite, young Master Jiang. Take care." As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Feiyang disappeared. Just as the rumors say, he's humble and easygoing. It's hard to find someone like him in this world. No wonder even the steward was so polite to him. The guard shook his head and returned to the treasure pavilion. East City District. Inside a small restaurant, for young men and women were lying on the ground with a bloody hole between their brows, fresh blood flowing out. On the side, a white-haired old man and a young man stood side by side. There were many people inside and outside the restaurant, looking at the old man and the young man. Their faces were full of awe. The white-haired old man looked at the four young men and women and asked the young man beside him, "Kid, are you used to it?" "I'm used to it." The young man nodded, looking at the blood on the ground without the slightest fear. "You got used to it so quickly, it seems that you're really a promising kid. Let's go, let's continue." The white-haired old man smiled, pulled the young man, and turned to walk outside. The crowd blocking the door hurriedly retreated to the side. "Wait a minute." But at this moment, a voice sounded. "And who is it?" He actually dares to ask Frenzy to wait a minute? Everyone was surprised. Although Frenzy had changed his appearance, everyone present could guess his identity. Why did he find us? At the same time, Frenzy frowned and pulled Long Tianyu. "Kid, let's go quickly. Don't let him ruin our mood." But Long Tianyu also heard Qin Feiyang's voice and was a little unhappy with Frenzy's attitude. Why was it that seeing Brother Haotian was like seeing a god of plague? There's no buts. "Hurry up." Frenzy dragged Long Tianyu and rushed outside. "Shua." At this moment, Qin Feiyang appeared in the restaurant and said angrily, "Why are you running?" "I have something to do." "So it's Jiang Haotian. The more I look at this kid, the more I like him." "Yeah, if it was someone else who would care about you." But he gave 10 million soul stones to the family of the four guards. Everyone began to discuss. They looked at Qin Feiyang with friendliness and praise. Frenzy looked at this scene and couldn't help but pout. He turned to Qin Feiyang and frowned. "What are you doing?" Qin Feiyang looked at the four young men and women lying in a pool of blood, then looked at Frenzy and said, "Follow me back to Nine Heaven Palace immediately." "Are you crazy?" "Can't tell the situation." Frenzy raised his eyebrows. The others didn't know what Frenzy was talking about, but Qin Feiyang was well aware. Obviously, Frenzy also realized that something was wrong and didn't want to bring Long Tianyu back. Chapter 21-25. I already have an idea on this matter. Let's go back. Qin Feiyang said as he activated a teleportation altar. Frenzy was taken aback. "Really?" Qin Feiyang nodded and stepped onto the altar. "Okay, let's go back." Frenzy's eyes flashed as he took a facial restoration pill and jumped onto the altar with Long Tianyu. Everyone, sorry for the disturbance. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and smiled at the people in the restaurant. The three figures quickly disappeared. 9 Heaven Palace. On the stairway to heaven, Qin Feiyang and Frenzy walked side by side in front, while Long Tianyu obediently followed behind. The stairway to heaven rumbled. This was a warning, because Long Tianyu wasn't a disciple of 9 Heaven Palace yet. What is going on? This daddy has never seen Shangguan Fenglan care so much about someone, let alone a child. Frenzy secretly asked. This matter actually doesn't have much to do with Long Tianyu. It's the gray castle that attracted Shangguan Fenglan's attention. Qin Feiyang transmitted. What? Frenzy frowned. Qin Feiyang briefly explained the situation. So that's the case. I didn't expect this demonic creature to have such a deep grudge with 9 Heaven Palace. Frenzy muttered. So, as long as Long Tianyu doesn't say anything, Shangguan Fenglan won't do anything to Long Tianyu? Qin Feiyang secretly said. Frenzy nodded. Then we have to tell this kid in advance. Qin Feiyang responded. The two immediately turned to look at Long Tianyu. Is there something? Seeing Qin Feiyang and Frenzy suddenly turn to look at him, Long Tianyu was a little confused. Do you want to die? Frenzy laughed. Of course not. Long Tianyu shook his head. Frenzy said, All right then. We will bring someone with you later. You have to listen to our arrangements, understand? Understood. Long Tianyu nodded. But in fact, he had no idea what the madman was talking about. As Qin Feiyang and Long Tianyu walked, they secretly instructed Long Tianyu. An hour later, the three of them finally arrived at Lotus Lake. Madman glanced at a pavilion by the lake and stopped in the air. He looked down at Long Tianyu and asked, Do you remember what we taught you? Yes. Long Tianyu nodded. Let's go then. Madman waved his hand and brought Qin Feiyang and Long Tianyu across the sky, landing on the balcony of the pavilion. Qin Feiyang looked into the room and said respectfully, Hall Master, this disciple has fulfilled his mission and brought Senior Brother Fengzi and Long Tianyu back. Wait. Shangguan Fenglan's voice came from inside. Qin Feiyang was taken aback. He looked at Madman and smiled bitterly. Then let's wait. In the room, Shangguan Fenglan took out the image crystal. A short while later, the phantom of the Grand Elder appeared. Shangguan Fenglan said, Madman and that child have arrived. The corner of the Grand Elder's mouth twitched as he said, unhappily, It seems that Jiang Haoyan's face is big. He called him back as soon as he went. Shangguan Fenglan was taken aback, then covered her mouth and laughed. You can't be jealous, right? Shouldn't I be? I've been so good to him. When has he ever given me a good face? When I talk to him, he ignores me. When I send him a message, he directly ignores me. You're saying that I, the dignified Grand Elder of 9 Heavens Palace, can't compare to a Jiang Haojian? The Grand Elder's face was full of displeasure. Shangguan Fenglan smiled and said, It's normal for young people to be a little rebellious. He's still young? The Grand Elder was speechless. Shangguan Fenglan said, Although he's not young, in your eyes he's just a child. Sigh. The Grand Elder sighed and said, Interrogate them. I'll just watch from here and won't go over. All right. Shangguan Fenglan nodded and put away the image crystal. She said indifferently, Come in. Qin Feiyang and Long Tianyu quickly walked in with Long Tianyu. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Madman angrily and said, You're getting more and more powerful now. Even Grand Elder, and I can't persuade you. You flatter me. Madman pinched his nose and looked indifferent. He directly sat down on the chair next to Shangguan Fenglan. Shangguan Fenglan's face darkened and said angrily, Did I ask you to sit? Madman was stunned and asked, I can't sit. Yes. Shangguan Fenglan gritted her teeth and glared at him. Madman pursed his lips, got up and sat on the ground again. He said, I'll sit on the ground, okay? Shangguan Fenglan was furious. This was simply a scoundrel. Madman said impatiently, If you have something to say, Say it quickly. Don't dawdle, okay? Shut up, Shangguan Fenglan shouted. Madman shrugged and looked indifferent. However, he didn't dare to say anything. He was still a little afraid of Shangguan Fenglan. Shangguan Fenglan glared at Madman and raised her head to look at Qin Feiyang. She said, "You also retreat to the side." Qin Feiyang was stunned and then obediently retreated to the side. Then, Shangguan Fenglan ignored the two of them and looked at Long Tianyu. Long Tianyu was a little nervous. Because Shangguan Fenglan had been in a high position for a long time, she naturally gave people a strong sense of oppression. And Long Tianyu was only a 3-star combat emperor and a child. How could he not be nervous when facing such a terrifying existence? A moment passed. Shangguan Fenglan nodded and finally said, "Not bad. At such a young age, you're already a 3-star combat emperor. In time, you will definitely surpass Madman and Jiang Haoyin." Him. Madman smiled disdainfully. Shangguan Fenglan suddenly stood up and said angrily, "I told you to shut up. You don't remember? Don't. Continue. I won't say anything anymore." Madman quickly waved his hand. Phew! Shangguan Fenglan glared fiercely at Madman and let out a long breath. She returned to her seat and looked at Long Tianyu. She said, "Answer me. Do you have the confidence to surpass them?" "Yes." Long Tianyu nodded seriously. "Very good." Shangguan Fenglan nodded and said, "Then now, can you answer a few of my questions?" "All right." Long Tianyu said. Shangguan Fenglan said, "You can't lie to me. You have to tell me the truth." "Of course. Because grandfather taught me since I was young that children can't lie." Long Tianyu said. Shangguan Fenglan was stunned and couldn't help but laugh. What a sensible and cute child. Next, Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand. Divine power surged and a shadow slowly condensed. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at the shadow and their pupils suddenly shrank. Because this shadow was the Grey Castle. And the shadow that Shangguan Fenglan condensed was no different from the real Grey Castle. In other words, it was exactly the same. What did this mean? It meant that Shangguan Fenglan did know the Grey Castle, and she was not just familiar with it. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Long Tianyu and said with a smile, "Do you know it?" "Yes, he is the mysterious Grandpa Grey." Long Tianyu nodded. "Grandpa Grey?" Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. "Yes, it helped me and I am very grateful to it, so I call it Grandpa Grey." Long Tianyu said, "I see." Shangguan Fenglan nodded in realization and said, "Are you very familiar with him?" "Not familiar. I have only seen him once." Long Tianyu shook his head, his small face full of regret. "Only once?" Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. "Yes, it was that time. I fainted in the far west. Grandpa Grey saved me and took care of me for a few days. When I woke up, Grandpa Grey sent me out. Since then, I have never seen Grandpa Grey again. Beautiful sister, do you know where Grandpa Grey is? Can you tell me? I really want to say thank you to him in person." Long Tianyu looked at Shangguan Fenglan innocently. This. Shangguan Fenglan did not know how to answer for a moment. "You haven't seen it either?" Long Tianyu said with disappointment, "I really haven't seen it. I don't know where it is." "If you know, can you tell me?" Shangguan Fenglan asked with a smile. "I really don't know." Long Tianyu shook his head. Shangguan Fenglan raised her eyebrows and asked, "Then why did it help you?" "I don't know." Long Tianyu said. Shangguan Fenglan said, "It helped you so much. How can you not know?" Long Tianyu lowered his head and said with grievance, "I really don't know. I also want to ask Grandpa Grey." This, Shangguan Fenglan was a little at a loss. She vaguely felt that this matter was not so simple. But thinking back, Long Tianyu was only a 13-year-old child. How could he lie? She pondered for a while. Shangguan Fenglan smiled again and said, "Tianyu, do you want to stay in Jutian Palace?" Of course, there are a lot of novel things here. And I heard from Brother Madman that there are a lot of treasures here that can make my cultivation stronger. Long Tanyu said with a face full of yearning. Then your brother Madman really didn't lie to you. I can also let you stay in Jiuqin Palace, but you have to tell me the truth. Do you know where your Grandpa Gray is now? Shangguan Fenglan said. You actually used this kind of temptation to confuse a child. How despicable. Madman's eyes were full of contempt. In fact, he and Qin Feiyang had always been very nervous. Although they had clearly explained to Long Tanyu on the way, Long Tanyu was only a child after all. How could a child fight against Shangguan Fenglan? Let's talk about Long Tanyu. Hearing Shangguan Fenglan's words, he glanced at Qin Feiyang and Madman, then looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, Beautiful sister, are you doubting me? Shangguan Fenglan froze, and her expression was a little unnatural. She was actually seen through by a child and questioned in public. It was too embarrassing. Beautiful sister, I really don't know where Grandpa Gray is. I only remember that when I saw him that time he was in the far west. Why don't you go to the far west to look for him? Long Tanyu said. Okay, I believe you. Shangguan Fenglan nodded. This kid is good. Madman snickered inwardly. Indeed, his mind is very flexible. No wonder Gray Castle likes him so much. Qin Feiyang secretly laughed. Looking at Long Tanyu, who was at ease, the worries in their hearts were finally relieved. Chapter 21-26. After asking for a long time, she still couldn't get an answer. Shangguan Fenglan was very helpless. Palace Master, if you don't believe us, you should at least believe a child. After all, such a young child can't possibly lie to you, right? Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Fenglan frowned and lowered her head in silence. Qin Feiyang and Madman looked at each other and couldn't help but reveal a smile in their eyes. This woman must be very conflicted now. Should they believe Long Tanyu's words? After a long time, Shangguan Fenglan seemed to have made a decision. She looked up at Qin Feiyang and Madman and said, I want to keep Long Tanyu by my side. What? Qin Feiyang and Madman were stunned. Although they had expected that Shangguan Fenglan would make an exception and keep Long Tanyu in Nine Heavens Palace, they didn't expect that she would keep Long Tanyu by her side. The nature of this was completely different. Although Long Tanyu was smart, he was still a child. But Shangguan Fenglan was different. As an old monster who had lived for an unknown number of years, he was shrewd, experienced, and had terrifying means. If Long Tanyu stayed by her side, he would be exposed sooner or later. Why? Do you have any objections? Shangguan Fenglan looked at the two and asked. No. Qin Feiyang hurriedly waved his hand and said, This kid can stay by your side because of his ancestors. How would we dare to have any objections? Yes. We can't be happier for him. Madman also nodded repeatedly. Is that so? But looking at your expressions, why do you seem a little unhappy? Shangguan Fenglan said. No. It's just a little too sudden and unexpected. However, for such a big matter, Senior Brother Madman and I don't have the final say. After all, we are not Long Tanyu's guardians. So, we have to ask Long Tanyu's opinion on this matter first. He's a child, we can't force him. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Shangguan Fenglan nodded, looked at Long Tanyu with a gentle smile and asked, Child, are you willing to stay by my side? I promise that no matter what happens in the future, I will give you the best. No. Long Tanyu shook his head without hesitation. Rejected? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned and asked suspiciously, why? One had to know. With her identity and position in the Nine Heavens Palace, who knew how many people would want to follow her? I'm not familiar with you, Long Tanyu said. This reason made Shangguan Fenglan unable to refute, because it was the truth. Even though she had long known of Long Tianyu's existence, this was the first time they had met, so they weren't familiar with one another. "Madman, what do we do?" Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. "I think it doesn't matter. After all, whether Long Tianyu follows Shangguan Fenglan or stays in Nine Heaven Palace as an ordinary disciple, he is still under Shangguan Fenglan's surveillance." Madman thought, "That's true." Qin Feiyang muttered to himself. Then he said worriedly, "But Long Tianyu is still so young. I'm afraid that he won't be able to withstand Shangguan Fenglan's seduction." "Speak the truth. For us to be able to help to this extent is already considered extremely benevolent. Besides, it's impossible for us to stay by his side and protect him forever. So in the future, it will depend on his own ability." Madman transmitted his voice. "That makes sense." Qin Feiyang muttered. He glanced at Shangguan Fenglan and transmitted his voice to Long Tianyu. "You can stay by her side, but you have to remember, no matter what she promises you, you can't reveal anything. You can't reveal any information about your Grandpa Hui. Do you understand?" Long Tianyu glanced at Qin Feiyang. He was a little hesitant. "Follow her, and you will have a good future. You don't need to do anything more. You just need to keep your Grandpa Hui's secret." Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice again. "All right." Long Tianyu secretly responded. He looked up at Shangguan Fenglan and said, "Pretty sister, I thought about it and decided to follow you." "Why?" "You didn't agree just now." Shangguan Fenglan was surprised. "Because you can protect me, and I can sense my mother's scent on you." Long Tianyu blinked his big eyes and said, "Mother's scent?" Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Although she was in a high position and had great strength, she was still very unfamiliar with the matter of giving birth to children. Suddenly, a child ran to her and said that he had the scent of a mother. If it were any unmarried woman, they would definitely find it difficult to adapt to this situation. Long Tianyu looked at Shangguan Fenglan suspiciously and said, "Pretty sister, are you unwilling?" I'm willing. Shangguan Fenglan came back to her senses and hurriedly nodded. After chatting for a while, Shangguan Fenglan gave the order to leave. Qin Feiyang and Madman were also very tactful. They secretly exhorted Long Tianyu a few times before turning to leave. They had done everything they could. The rest was left to Long Tianyu to face. There was a saying that flowers in a greenhouse could not withstand the wind and waves. If he wanted to stand out, he had to rely on himself. After Qin Feiyang and Madman left, Shangguan Fenglan looked at Long Tianyu and said with a smile, "Tianyu, I have something to do. You go outside and play first." "Okay." Long Tianyu nodded and turned to run out. He looked here and there, his little face full of curiosity. Shangguan Fenglan stood at the door and watched for a while before returning to the room and taking out the image crystal. Soon, the first elder's image appeared. Shangguan Fenglan asked respectfully, "Did you see anything?" "What about you?" the first elder asked. Shangguan Fenglan pondered for a while and said, "To be honest, it's full of loopholes." This old man thinks so too. Long Tianyu is just a young and ignorant child. However, when faced with your questions, he was able to answer them fluently. Why is that? It must be Jiang Haotian and Madman who are teaching him. There's something unusual about this. The first elder sighed. What's going on with these two brats? You and I both know Madman's character. He never puts anyone in his eyes. He doesn't even spare a glance for those heaven-rolled disciples. But now he's actually hanging out with Jiang Haotian. Shangguan Fenglan frowned. The first elder thought for a while and said with a smile, "Maybe they hit it off." "Is that so?" Shangguan Fenglan muttered. The first elder suddenly asked, "Do you still remember their sparring on Turtle King Island?" "I remember. Although we didn't see it with our own eyes, I went to ask Feng Zihan later. Because at that time, only Feng Zihan had been to Turtle King Island. But Feng Zihan didn't know much." Shangguan Fenglan said, Then who won and who lost? The first elder asked. I'm not sure. I heard from Feng Zihan that from the conversation between Jiang Haotian and Madman, it seems that the winner is Jiang Haotian. But Madman didn't admit it. But one thing is undeniable. Madman took special care of Jiang Haotian after their sparring. Shangguan Fenglan said, If Jiang Haotian really won, then we really underestimated his ability. But thinking about it, it's not very likely. After all, you and I both know Madman's methods. Even if he suppressed his cultivation, there's definitely no one in Jiutian Palace who can defeat him. Headache. The first elder rubbed his forehead. He really couldn't understand what kind of relationship there was between Madman and Qin Feiyang. When Qin Feiyang returned to the cave abode, the sky had already darkened. He didn't go to the resource hall, because he had more important things to do, refining the dragon soul, primordial spirit pill. When he left the treasure hall during the day, the reason why he was so happy was because he got the herbs for the dragon soul, primordial spirit pill, from Shengguan Qiu. And there was more than one set. After all, he couldn't just take care of himself. There was also Zhao Tai Lai, White-Eyed Wolf, Mermaid Princess, Tang Hai, and the others. Everyone had to have a share. So during the day, he coaxed Shangguan Qiu in the treasure hall and finally got 20 sets of herbs. Although Shangguan Qiu seemed reluctant, Qin Feiyang could see that 20 sets of herbs wasn't the limit of the treasure hall. They must be holding back. Of course, the treasure hall also had its rules. He couldn't get to the bottom of it. Moreover, he was already very satisfied to get 20 sets of herbs. But these 20 sets of herbs also cost him a lot. After all, it was a dragon soul. And it was a dragon soul above the perfection god of war. After discussing for half a day, the two finally reached a consensus. 1 set of herbs, 10 million. Not divine crystals, but soul stones. Shangguan Qiu also learned to be smart. No matter what he traded with Qin Feiyang in the future, he would use soul stones to trade. In other words, these 20 sets of herbs cost Qin Feiyang 200 million soul stones. Inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang took out 2 jade boxes and an iron box and opened them one by one. Inside the 2 jade boxes were the flower of the dragon god and the primordial spirit lotus. The primordial spirit lotus was the size of a baby's fist. It was snow-white and emitted a hazy divine light with a holy aura. Inside the iron box was a golden dragon, but it was very small. It was about the size of an adult's palm. It lay quietly in the iron box, motionless, and no emotional fluctuations could be felt. This was the dragon soul of the golden dragon. However, this dragon soul's consciousness had already been erased. A dragon soul with its consciousness erased was just like a human with its consciousness erased. It had no lethality at all and was just a pure herb. Qin Feiyang wasn't in a hurry to refine the elixir. First, he opened the elixir scripture and carefully read the steps of refining the dragon soul, primordial spirit pill. About half an hour passed. Qin Feiyang finally memorized the elixir recipe. For elixirs like the dragon soul primordial spirit pill, he didn't allow any mistakes, because once he made a mistake, a set of herbs would be wasted. These herbs were all very hard to find, and one wasted set was one less set. Closing his eyes and calming his mind for a moment, when his heart was as calm as water, Qin Feiyang finally opened his eyes. He revived the nether devil flame and opened the furnace to refine the elixir. Every step was extremely careful. His spiritual force was also highly concentrated. In less than 10 breaths, his forehead was covered with bean-sized beads of sweat. Fire Lotus, White-Eyed Wolf, Mermaid Princess, and the others also woke up from their seclusion. But from beginning to end, no one made the slightest movement. They silently got up and then quietly looked at Qin Feiyang. Their hearts were filled with anticipation. Chapter 21-27. Time passed quietly. About an hour later, suddenly, a bright golden light bloomed from the Qing Yuan cauldron. Following that, pieces of pill qi rose up like auspicious light from the heavens, filled with a sacred aura. There was also a strong pill fragrance. Success! Zhao Tai Lai and the others stared at the Qing Yuan cauldron excitedly. Whoosh! With a piercing sound, a pill flew out of the cauldron and floated above it. It was a dazzling golden pill. 9 pill patterns, bright and dazzling. And it also had a strong divine dragon aura. Qin Feiyang looked at the pill, wiped the sweat on his forehead, and then smiled happily. Whether it was the 4 symbols infinite divine pill or the dragon soul, primordial spirit pill, he was very happy that he could successfully refine them on his first try. Of course, this was also due to the alchemy scripture. Without the alchemy scripture, no matter how high one's attainments were, there was a possibility of failure. Not bad. This is the dragon soul primordial spirit pill. A gray figure appeared, looking at the pill, and said, "It was the artifact spirit." Qin Feiyang was stunned, turned to look at the artifact spirit, and said, "You know about the dragon soul primordial spirit pill?" "Yes, I've seen it with your ancestor." The artifact spirit nodded. Qin Feiyang nodded, but his expression suddenly froze and he frowned. "Wait, so my ancestor opened the door of potential because he took these pills?" He originally thought that his ancestor relied on his own ability to open the door of potential. But now, he suddenly thought that since his ancestor also had these pill formulas, he should have also taken the pills to open the door of potential. Wrong. Before the artifact spirit answered, Tantai Li spoke first. Wrong? Qin Feiyang was stunned, scratching his head, and looked at Tantai Li in confusion. Tantai Li said, "When your ancestor opened the door of potential, he never took any pills." No. Qin Feiyang was shocked. Yes, I don't know what happened after he entered the ancient world, but before he entered the ancient world, he never took any pills like the potential pill. Tantai Li said. Impressive. Qin Feiyang was amazed. It turned out that he really relied on his own ability to unlock the door of potential. How outstanding was this talent? He had seen many monstrous geniuses. However, as far as he knew, Zhuge Mingyang was the only person who had unlocked the door of potential on his own. However, he had only opened the 2nd level. Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but smile bitterly. He shook his head and said, "The ancestor relied on his own ability to open so many doors of potential. Well, I can't even open the first one. The gap between me and the ancestor is really big." Don't say that. It's because you had the potential pill from the very beginning. If you don't, you will definitely try to find an opportunity to unlock the door of potential. Who knows, he might succeed. Tantai Li consoled her. Maybe. Qin Feiyang shook his head and grabbed the dragon soul, primordial spirit pellet. He looked at the artifact spirit and said, "Let me borrow your aura." After saying that, he sat cross-legged on the ground and consumed the dragon soul, primordial spirit pill. The artifact spirit released its aura. One must know that the artifact spirit was a heaven-defying artifact. How terrifying was its aura! Qin Feiyang was shrouded by the aura. It was as if a mountain was pressing down on his body, making it difficult for him to breathe. Moreover, he had to endure the pain of the dragon soul primordial spirit pill's energy on his body. This was even more painful than when he took the great creation pill. He felt that his body was about to be torn apart. And his body was indeed about to be torn apart. His skin broke apart inch by inch and blood flowed out. If he took off his clothes now, he would be shocked to see that his entire body was covered with cracks, like a spider web. Boom! A moment passed. A muffled sound suddenly exploded in his body. Following closely, under the clothes on his chest, a dazzling blood light burst out. That blood light, even the blood-stained clothes, could not hide it. It was also at this moment. The pain on Qin Feiyang's face dissipated and was replaced by joy. He said, you can withdraw your aura. The artifact spirit withdrew its aura. Qin Feiyang immediately tore open his clothes and saw that the potential imprint had shockingly turned into a blood-red color. The mermaid princess and the others finally heaved a sigh of relief. The scene from before was too terrifying. They were afraid that Qin Feiyang's body would be torn apart by the dragon's soul, primordial spirit pill. Wait, Zhao? Tai Lai seemed to have thought of something. Looking at the mermaid princess and the others, he said in surprise, "Young master's body has been tempered by the heavenly tribulation, and even it can't withstand it." Then wouldn't we? Hearing this, everyone looked at each other. That's right. After being tempered by the heavenly tribulation, they were about to explode. Then wouldn't their untempered bodies be even more dangerous? It seems that we have to go all out to open this door of potential. Tang Hai sighed. Everyone nodded. Not to mention anything else, before opening the door of potential, they had to at least prepare some life-saving things. For example, the Life Divine Pill. While opening the door of potential, they were also recovering from their injuries. Qin Feiyang stood up, glanced at everyone, and said helplessly, "You haven't broken through to the perfect war god yet. Is there a need to think so much? Hurry up and cultivate." After saying that, he took the artifact spirit and entered the black tortoise realm. Then he found a pool and swallowed a divine life pill. While healing his injuries, he washed the bloodstains on his body. Qin Feiyang suddenly seemed to think of something. He turned his head to look at the artifact spirit standing by the pool and asked, "I remember you said that you saw my ancestors more than 2,000 years ago. When you saw them, what was their cultivation level?" "Very strong." The artifact spirit only said these two words. "Very strong? How strong were they?" Qin Feiyang was curious. The artifact spirit thought for a moment and said, "Stronger than the current Shangguan Fengluan." Damn, amazing. Qin Feiyang was dumbfounded. Back then, they were stronger than the current Shangguan Fengluan. Now that thousands of years had passed, wouldn't the cultivation level of the two ancestors have far surpassed Shangguan Fengluan? After Qin Feiyang came back to his senses, he smiled and said, "It seems that this matter can't be told to Madman." Why? The artifact spirit was suspicious. Madman, and my ancestors are from the same period. Maybe at that time my ancestor's cultivation level was lower than his. And now, Shangguan Fengluan is stronger than him. Think about it, with Madman's personality, wouldn't he go crazy after learning this news? Qin Feiyang said, "That makes sense." The artifact spirit nodded and smiled. However, Madman is to blame for this. For 7,000 or 8,000 years he has been wasting time. Otherwise, he would be more than a half-step god now. Qin Feiyang shook his head and said, "Indeed, although I don't understand Madman, his talent is not inferior to yours. And he also has a spatial divine object with a time array. If he is willing to cultivate seriously, his achievements will be unimaginable. But I am a little puzzled. Why did he waste all these years? Is there a special reason for this?" The artifact spirit said, "Who knows?" Qin Feiyang shook his head and smiled. During the conversation, Qin Feiyang's injuries had all been healed. After all, the effect of the divine life pill was far from comparable to the healing pill. Moreover, his bloodline power had the ability to repair itself. Then he jumped out of the pool, changed into clean clothes, and left the black tortoise realm. Sitting on a chair in the cave residence's living room, he lowered his head and pondered. As for the artifact spirit, it returned to his qi. Dong! Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked up at the stone door. With a wave of his hand, the stone door slowly opened and 4 young men stood outside. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "It's you, come in." It was the 4 people who went to the resource hall in the morning to sell the dragon god flower. "Greetings, Senior Brother Jiang." The 4 entered the cave residence and cupped their hands. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and said with a smile, I don't dare to accept this title, because in terms of experience and strength, you are the senior brothers. No, no, no. Experience and strength are useless. It depends on one's ability and status. Senior Brother Zhang's status and ability in the Ninth Heaven Palace has obviously surpassed us, so we should call you Senior Brother. The four smiled flatteringly. Qin Feiyong smiled. Without any more pleasantries, he took out 400,000 soul stones from his universe ring and piled them on the ground like a small mountain. The four's eyes immediately lit up. However, they didn't take out the dragon god flower. Qin Feiyong looked at the four suspiciously and said with a smile, I'm a man of my word. Give me the dragon god flower, and these 400,000 soul stones are yours. Hearing this, the four looked at each other. One of them smiled and said, Senior Brother Zhang, we have brought the dragon god flower, but we have a small request. Request? Qin Feiyong was stunned and frowned. The four of you, when we were in the resource hall this morning, we didn't mention any additional requests. That person said, This is something we thought of at the last minute. Then let's hear it. Qin Feiyong said, although he already had 20 sets of medicinal herbs now, the more medicinal herbs for this kind of pill, the better. As long as the request of the four wasn't too excessive, he would consider it. We want to raise the price. The four of us, 1 million soul stones each. That person smiled. Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. This request was actually to raise the price, and it was increased by 10 times at once. Originally, it was 400,000, but now 1 million soul stones, each was 4 million. What a big appetite. The four of you, when doing business, you have to keep your word. How can you raise the price at the last minute? Qin Feiyong said. We also know that a last-minute request is a bit excessive, but a mere 4 million soul stones is nothing to Senior Brother Zhang, right? You have to know that this morning, Senior Brother Zhang, you gave someone 40 million soul stones at the North City Gate. You are so generous, even to outsiders. Do you have to be so stingy with us, your fellow disciples? Right. The four of them laughed. This is not a matter of generosity or stinginess. It's a matter of credibility. I, Jiang Haotian, have always been a man of my word, and I am also very disgusted by the other party going back on their word. Since the four of you are not happy, then please go back, Qin Feiyong said with a faint smile. The four of them froze. Originally, they thought that Qin Feiyong was very easy to talk to, but they didn't expect that he would directly turn hostile and ask them to leave. However, the four of them quickly calmed down and had no intention of leaving. Chapter 21-28. Why? Do you want me to chase you out? Looking at the four of them standing in front of him motionless, Qin Feiyong said expressionlessly. Ha! The four of them laughed. Not only were they not afraid, they even sat down. Qin Feiyong's eyes turned cold. Did I ask you to sit? Senior Brother Zhang, don't be angry, listen to us first. One of them laughed. Qin Feiyong said, We don't have anything to say. No, no, no. Senior Brother Zhang works in the resource hall. Don't you know the rules of the resource hall? The four of them were all smiling. What rules? Qin Feiyong frowned. Any disciple who enters the resource hall to exchange for soul stones, the staff of the resource hall are not allowed to make private transactions. In other words, this morning you secretly asked us to make private transactions with you, which is already against the rules of the resource hall. And if we tell Hall Master Feng Yuan about this, what do you think the consequences will be? I'm afraid not only will we be punished, but we will also be chased out of the resource hall. The four of them laughed happily, as if they had Qin Feiyong under their control. Qin Feiyong was stunned. The resource hall did have such a rule. When he first entered the resource hall, Wang Yun first said this to him. However, He did not expect that the four of them would use this to threaten him. Senior Brother Jiang, we're just looking for money, and we don't want much. For these soul stones, is it worth it to fall out with us? The four of them said one after another, their faces full of playfulness. Qin Feiyang glanced at the four of them and nodded with a smile. It's indeed not worth it. That's right. Harmony brings wealth, that's the right way. One of them laughed. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and smiled. That makes sense. All right, I'll give you 4 million, but I want to take a look at the Dragon God flower. No problem. The four of them smiled proudly. One of them immediately took out a jade box, opened it, and handed it to Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang glanced at the jade box and saw that it was indeed the Dragon God's flower. Wait a moment, I'll give you the rest of the soul stones right away. Qin Feiyang smiled and touched the interspatial ring on his index finger. The four of them stared at Qin Feiyang's interspatial ring with greed in their eyes. There must be a lot of soul stones in that interspatial ring. What a pity. If we knew it would be so easy, we would have asked for more. Someone said telepathically. More? The other 3 stared blankly for a moment before their eyes lit up. It's not too late to raise the price. That's right. We have something on him. So aren't we the ones who have the final say? All right, then we'll raise the price. The four of them immediately agreed. They looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Wait. What is it? Qin Feiyang was taken aback and looked at the four of them suspiciously. We've changed our minds again. Each of us wants 100 million soul stones. Yes, not a word less. The four of them said, 100 million? Qin Feiyang was stunned. They were really 4 wolves that couldn't be fed. Then he smiled. The four of them also smiled. They thought that Qin Feiyang had agreed. They couldn't help but feel excited. For 100 million soul stones. Ordinary disciples like them didn't even dare to think about it. Okay, I'll satisfy your request. Qin Feiyang smiled. Thank you. The four of them laughed. But 400 million soul stones is not a small number. I don't have that many on me. I put the rest in the interspatial divine item. Why don't you come with me to get it? Qin Feiyang said. Interspatial divine item? The four of them were stunned. There's no need for that. The interspatial divine item is an independent space after all. If anything happens, then we won't be able to help. Jiang Haotian, don't play tricks. Just take the soul stones out of the interspatial divine item. The four of them sneered. They were also afraid that Qin Feiyang would kill them, so they didn't dare to go to the interspatial divine item. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, I didn't expect the four of you to be so careful. We can't be careless. After all, you're Jiang Haotian. The four of them said. All right, I'll give you the soul stones now. Qin Feiyang nodded and smiled, but the next moment, a cold light suddenly flashed in his eyes. At the same time, he waved his big hand, and 4 streaks of blood streaked across the sky like lightning and entered the glabella of the four of them. The four of them screamed and died on the spot. Threatening me? Qin Feiyang took a step forward and looked coldly at the four of them, who died with their eyes wide open, and said, You dare to threaten me? You guys are really tired of living. After saying that, he bent down and picked up the jade box containing the Dragon God's flower, and took away the 4 universe rings. Although the four of them were dead, their screams could be heard. What's going on? Who's screaming? The disciples of the first sacred peak ran out one after another and looked at the cave where Qin Feiyang was, because they all heard clearly that the screams came from the first cave. What happened? Suddenly, a figure broke through the air. It was Jin Yunchang. Although Madman was an inner sect elder, he basically didn't care about anything, so he was still the one in charge. Elder Jin. There were a few screams coming from the first cave. Someone said, What? Jin Yunchang's face changed, and he quickly flew to the door of the cave. As he knocked on the door, he shouted, "Jiang Haoyan, are you inside? Open the door." So fast. Inside the cave, Qin Feiyang looked at the stone door and couldn't help but frown. There was still some distance between the 10 sacred peaks and the inner sect's deacon hall. Moreover, although the screams of the 4 people were heard, the stone door of the cave also had a certain degree of soundproofing. Logically speaking, Jin Yunchang shouldn't have heard it. But now, Jin Yunchang actually rushed over so quickly, as if it was premeditated. Jin Yunchang roared, "Jiang Haoyan, if you don't open the door, I will break it by force." Could it be that Jiang Haoyan is not in the cave now? He is. In the evening, I saw him come back with my own eyes. I think something shady must have happened in the cave, so he didn't dare to open the door. Everyone whispered, "Boom!" But at this moment, the stone door slowly opened. Qin Feiyang stood behind the stone door, full of murderous intent. Why is there such a strong murderous intent? Everyone was surprised. Jin Yunchang glanced at Qin Feiyang and rushed into the cave. Qin Feiyang also ignored Jin Yunchang. Bastard! Soon, Jin Yunchang's angry roar sounded in the cave, followed by Jin Yunchang walking out gloomily with 4 corpses. What? 4 people died. What the hell is going on? Everyone was bewildered. Jin Yunchang walked out of the cave, looked at Qin Feiyang and said in a deep voice, "Jiang Haoyan, please give me an explanation." Qin Feiyang said, "Previously, they hid in the cave and wanted to plot against me, but I discovered them, so I killed them." Plot against him? Is that so? Everyone muttered. Since it was a plot, then their deaths are not to be regretted. Drag them away and bury them. At this time, Madman flew over and looked at Jin Yunchang. "Elder, this is only Jiang Haoyan's side of the story. No one knows what happened before. How can you be so rash?" Jin Yunchang looked at Madman and said, Madman said, "Then tell me, what is going on?" Jin Yunchang glanced at Qin Feiyang and said, "We can't rule out the possibility that Jiang Haoyan killed them on purpose." Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows. "Elder Jin, do you want me to die that much?" "What a joke. I'm just stating facts." "You said they ambushed you. Then why don't you take out the evidence?" Jin Yunchang said angrily. Qin Feiyang said, "They ambushed me. How would I have the time to find evidence?" "Then what you said might not be true." Jin Yunchang sneered and looked at Madman. "Elder, this matter must be investigated thoroughly. Perhaps Jiang Haoyan is really innocent, but without evidence, we can't be so arbitrary." "All right, I'll leave it to you to investigate." After Madman finished speaking, he turned around and prepared to return home. "Madman, please wait a moment." But suddenly, a faint laugh sounded. Everyone looked in the direction of the voice and saw a young man appear out of thin air in the void above. This person held a folding fan in his hand and wore a white robe. His long hair draped over his shoulders, and he exuded a scholarly aura. "It's you?" Madman turned around and frowned. "Yes, it's me." The young man in white nodded. "This person looks so familiar. I seem to have seen him somewhere before." Everyone looked at the young man in white suspiciously. Qin Feiyang looked at the young man in white with a trace of doubt in his eyes. This person's voice sounded familiar. "Right, I remember now. He's Yu Zijia, the second on the heaven roll, the #1 alchemist, and the disciple of the second elder." Someone exclaimed in shock. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. "So it's him," Qin Feiyang muttered. No wonder he felt that this person's voice sounded familiar. Yu Zijia glanced at Qin Feiyang and smiled at Madman. "Madman, there is indeed a mystery behind this matter." Madman was taken aback and crossed his arms in front of his chest. "Then why don't you tell me?" Yu Zijia smiled. "If I say it, you can't be biased. After all, you are now an inner elder." Of course, as long as you can produce evidence, I will deal with it impartially. Madman said. I'm waiting for you to say this. Yu Zijia smiled and glanced at the disciples around, saying, Actually, Jiang Haoqian killed them to silence them. What? Everyone was surprised. Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank slightly. This person was so calm. Could it be that he really had evidence? Let me show everyone a video. Yu Zijia took out the image crystal, and with a wave of his hand, a video slowly unfolded in the night sky. What? Qin Feiyang was shocked. This video was actually the scene when he was talking with the 4 people in the cave. In other words, when the 4 people came to find him, Yu Zijia also sneaked in. Understood, Qin Feiyang muttered. No wonder the 4 people were so bold and dared to threaten him. It turned out that they had Yu Zijia backing them from behind. Moreover, Jin Yunchang was definitely an accomplice of these people. In other words, this was a killing trap set up by Yu Zijia and Jin Yunchang. Chapter 21-29. When the video ended, the crowd was in an uproar. He really killed people to silence them. As a member of the resource hall, he actually used his authority to make private transactions with others. This is already against the rules. When I heard that he let Feng Wenhai go and gave 40 million soul stones to the family of the deceased outside the city this morning, I thought that he was really a good person. But I didn't expect that all of this was just an act. He really hid his strength well. At this moment, looking at Qin Feiyang, everyone's eyes were filled with disgust. Seeing this scene, Madman couldn't help but frown. Yu Zijia, on the other hand, was full of smiles. He put away the video crystal and looked at Madman. Jiang Haoqian used his authority to fill his pockets and even killed the innocent. May I ask how to deal with such a mistake? Kid, what are you doing? Even if you made private transactions with them and violated the rules of the resource hall, Feng Yuan wouldn't dare to do anything to you after learning about it. At most, he would only give you a small punishment. But why did you kill them? What do you want me to do now? Madman thought to himself, extremely angry. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. You also saw it. It was them who kept pushing their luck. If it were you, would you tolerate it? Madman was slightly stunned and thought to himself, Indeed, I can't tolerate it. That's right. I don't regret killing these 4 people. But this Yu Zijia actually did such a thing behind my back. I can't tolerate it. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed with a cold light. Madman asked suspiciously, But then again, why did this Yu Zijia harm you? How would I know? Qin Feiyang couldn't figure it out either. He didn't seem to have any grudges with this Yu Zijia. Last time at the auction house, when he bid for the 4 symbols infinite divine pill, it was also Madman who humiliated him. The second 4 symbols infinite divine pill was also played by Mu Tianyang and Hui. Logically speaking, even if Yu Zijia was angry and wanted to find trouble, he should find trouble with Madman and Mu Tianyang. But why was he targeting him now? Madman, you haven't punished him yet. Don't tell me you want to bend the law and protect him. Yu Zijia said mockingly as he looked at Madman. What a joke. I am a selfless man. Why would I cover up for others? Jin Yunchang, send him to the law enforcement hall immediately and hand him over to Shangguan Fenglan for her to decide. Madman shouted. Yes. Jin Yunchang was overjoyed. He turned to Qin Feiyang and sneered, Let's go. Qin Feiyang glanced at Yu Zijia, then looked at Jin Yunchang and said, Lead the way. You can't walk by yourself? Jin Yunchang shouted as he kicked Qin Feiyang's body. Who did he think he was, asking him to lead the way? Qin Feiyang clenched his fists and stared at Jin Yunchang. I don't know where the law enforcement hall is. Are you kidding me? You've been in 9 Heavens Palace for so long, but you don't even know where the enforcement hall is. Jin Yunchang was taken aback and said angrily. Qin Feiyong said, with just one sentence, "You feel like I'm playing with you. How inferior are you usually?" Jin Yunchang was furious. He raised his arm and was about to slap Qin Feiyong's face. Madman's face darkened and said, Jin Yunchang, it's not your turn to show off. Jin Yunchang's body stiffened. He glanced at Madman, then looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Follow me." With that, he flew towards the depths of Nine Heavens Palace. I, Jiang Haoyan, rarely take the initiative to cause trouble, but I'm never afraid of trouble. This time I admit defeat, but there's still a long way to go. Let's wait and see. Qin Feiyong glanced at Yu Zijie indifferently, then followed Jin Yunchang and left. There's still a long way to go. The corner of Yu Zijie's mouth lifted. Looking at Qin Feiyong's back, he pursed his lips with a thick sense of ridicule. Yu Zijie. Suddenly, Madman's voice sounded. Yu Zijie was taken aback. He turned to look at Madman and asked, "What's the matter?" Madman said, "I heard that 2 years ago you snatched a few medicinal herbs from an outer disciple." 2 years ago? Snatched a few medicinal herbs. Yu Zijie was stunned. There was such a thing? As a heavenless disciple, you actually snatched medicinal herbs from an outer disciple. You really brought shame to our Nine Heavens Palace. Madman sneered, then turned and left. Yu Zijie was a little dumbfounded. When he came back to his senses, he hurriedly shouted, "When did I do such a thing? Explain it to me, clearly." "You know very well," Madman said without turning his head. "It can't be. This Yu Zijie actually snatched medicinal herbs from an outer disciple." "It seems that it's not a good thing." The surrounding people whispered in each other's ears. "Don't listen to Madman's nonsense. This is purely false. He saw that I exposed Jiang Haoyan's true face, so he made up this lie to take revenge on me. Everyone, you must not be deceived by him." Yu Zijie hurriedly explained. On Qin Feiyong's side, along the way, he lowered his head and didn't say a word. Unknowingly, an ancient hall appeared in front of them. The hall was completely black, sitting on top of a giant mountain that was thousands of feet high. It was like a giant beast, emitting an aura that made people tremble. In front of the hall, there was a square. In the corner of the square, there was a tall stone tablet. The 3 words were like iron hooks and silver strokes, vigorous and powerful. Law Enforcement Hall. That's right. This was the law enforcement hall that made countless disciples tremble in fear. On both sides of the door, 2 men in black held long spears and stood straight. Their eyes were extremely sharp. Their aura was also unfathomable. "We're here," Jin Yunchang said. Qin Feiyong raised his head and looked at the law enforcement hall. An aura that made people in awe suddenly rushed towards them. It was very quiet here, but in this quiet atmosphere, it seemed to be filled with an invisible, killing intent. One could even vaguely smell a faint smell of blood. The 2 landed on the square one after another and walked to the door. "What's the matter?" The 2 black-clothed men looked at Jin Yunchang expressionlessly and asked. This Jiang Haoyan used his power to fill his pockets and even killed 4 of our disciples. So I specially brought him here to ask Hall Master Shangguan to make a decision. Jin Yunchang cupped his hands and said, The 2 black-clothed men looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. Whether it was in the Nine Heavens Palace or outside, this boy was quite well received. How could he do such a thing? Jin Yunchang said, "May I ask if Hall Master Shangguan is here?" "No. Wait a moment. I'll immediately report to Hall Master." One of the black-clothed men said and took out an image crystal. Buzz. Not long after, Shangguan Fenglan's shadow appeared. There was a young man beside her. It was Long Tianyu. "What's the matter?" Shangguan Fenglan looked at the black-clothed man and asked indifferently, it's about Jiang Haoyan, Hall Master. Please come over immediately. The black-clothed man said, Jiang Haoyan? Shangguan Fenglan was stunned and said, Okay, I'll be right there. After saying that, the shadow disappeared into thin air. A moment later, swish, Shangguan Fenglan finally arrived in the sky above the square. Greetings, Hall Master. Jin Yunchang, Qin Feiyang, and the two black-clothed men bowed one after another. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Qin Feiyang, landed in front of the door, and then entered the main hall, saying, Come in. Qin Feiyang and Jin Yunchang followed in. The layout of the main hall was very simple. There was only one chair in the entire main hall. It was placed right at the top, and it seemed extremely empty. However, the inside of the hall was a little dim, giving people a sense of oppression from the soul. Shangguan Fenglan walked straight to the front of the chair, then turned around and sat on it. She looked at Jin Yunchang and said, Speak. Jin Yunchang immediately recounted what had happened in detail. Shangguan Fenglan heard this and looked at Qin Feiyang, saying, Is it true? Qin Feiyang nodded. You're getting bolder and bolder. Shangguan Fenglan suddenly said angrily. Qin Feiyang said, I know I was wrong, and I'm willing to be punished. Jin Yunchang bowed and said, Hall Master, this matter concerns 4 lives. Please punish Jiang Haoyan severely. Those who have made mistakes should be punished severely. I have my own decision. You can leave. Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand. Yes. Jin Yunchang responded respectfully, then glanced coldly at Qin Feiyang, turned around and left quickly. After Jin Yunchang left, Shangguan Fenglan said angrily, How can you be so careless? You actually let Yu Zijie have something on you? I didn't expect that Yu Zijie would work with Jin Yunchang to deal with me. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. Shangguan Fenglan was stunned and asked, Jin Yunchang is also involved. Although Jin Yunchang didn't say it explicitly, he rushed over as soon as I killed those people. This matter obviously has something to do with him. Qin Feiyang said. Then why did Yu Zijie want to deal with you? Did you offend him? Shangguan Fenglan was suspicious. This is also the question I can't figure out. I have never been on bad terms with him. I didn't even know there was such a person before. Qin Feiyang frowned. That's not right. I heard from my sister that when you were bidding for the 4 symbols infinite divine pill in the treasure pavilion, you seemed to have humiliated him. Shangguan Fenglan said, That's true, but the one who humiliated him was Madman. Later on, I went to the far west with Madman. It was also Mu Tianyang and Hua Yi who were playing with him. I didn't say anything at all. Qin Feiyang said. Shangguan Fenglan pondered for a moment and said, It seems that this matter needs to be investigated properly. How about this? You go to the prison first. Prison? Qin Feiyang was stunned. My 9 Heavens Palace has a prison. It's right under the enforcement hall. It's specifically used to punish disciples who have made mistakes. Shangguan Fenglan nodded. Qin Feiyang suddenly said with dissatisfaction, Although I killed someone, but in the end it was them who were aggressive. But before Qin Feiyang finished speaking, Shangguan Fenglan said, But you violated the rules of the resource hall. This is an indisputable fact. If I don't punish you now, Feng Yuan will definitely use this matter to make a big fuss. Moreover, the disciples under him will not be convinced. Qin Feiyang still had a look of dissatisfaction. Don't worry. This Highness will arrange it. At most, you will stay in the prison for a while. It won't be a big deal. Shangguan Fenglan said. All right then. Qin Feiyang said helplessly. By the way, you want the Dragon God's flower. Do you want to study some kind of pill? Shangguan Fenglan asked. Chapter 2130. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded. What kind of elixir? Shangguan Fenglan was curious. It's a secret for now. Qin Feiyang smiled mysteriously. Brat. Shangguan Fenglan rolled her eyes at Qin Feiyang and shouted, Men! A man in black outside immediately ran in. Shangguan Fenglan said, Take Jiang Haotian to the prison, but remember, it's just an ordinary prison. Yes, the man in black respectfully responded. Looking at Qin Feiyang, he politely stretched out his hand and said, Please. Qin Feiyang nodded, glanced at Shangguan Fenglan, then turned and walked out of the hall. The man in black also followed him out. You Zijia, Jin Yunchang, how did two completely unrelated people end up together? Shangguan Fenglan lowered her head, her brows tightly knitted together. Outside the hall, Qin Feiyang followed behind the man in black, passing through the square and coming to the cliff on the east side. There was a mountain road at the edge of the cliff, winding down to the mountainside. The man in black walked along the mountain road and said with a smile, Jiang Haotian, Lord Temple Master takes good care of you. What do you mean? Qin Feiyang was curious. You also heard Lord Temple Master say that it's just an ordinary prison. Do you know what this means? It means that Lord Temple Master has no intention of blaming you at all. You may not know the situation in our prison. Let me put it this way. Anyone who enters our law enforcement hall's prison basically never returns. The man in black smiled. So serious? Qin Feiyang was shocked. Yes, this is the reason why the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace are so afraid of our enforcement hall. We have always been cruel to those who have made mistakes. In short, once in prison, they will be tortured and abused. Even if we accidentally kill them, the higher-ups won't blame us. The man in black smiled. Qin Feiyang was secretly shocked and said, I didn't expect the power of the law enforcement hall to be so great. The law enforcement hall is the dagger of Nine Heavens Palace. We are law enforcers, also known as executioners. The black-clothed man said, Executioner. Actually, no matter what, there are two sides to everything. Although you are cruel, it is because of you that Nine Heavens Palace is so peaceful. Qin Feiyang smiled. Ugh. The man in black turned his head and looked at Qin Feiyang in astonishment. What is it? Qin Feiyang was puzzled. I was a little surprised. After being in the law enforcement hall for so many years, this is the first time I've heard someone praise us, the law enforcement hall. The man in black shook his head and smiled. This is the truth. Nothing can be accomplished without rules. The contribution you enforcers have made to the Nine Heavens Palace is incomparable. Qin Feiyang said. Ha! The black-clothed man smiled in relief and said, Now I finally understand why Lord Hall Master is taking such good care of you. Your talent. You flatter me. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. Suddenly, as if thinking of something, he asked calmly, Elder Yin Hui, is she in the law enforcement hall now? The black-clothed man said, Elder Yin has been in seclusion these years. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood and nodded thoughtfully. We're here. After a while, the black-clothed man smiled. Qin Feiyang looked up and saw that they were already halfway up the mountain. In front of them there was a dark stone door, as if it was built with divine iron exuding a cold aura. The stone door was closed. Next to it there was an old man in black, sitting cross-legged. The old man had his eyes closed, and there was a kind of indifference in his expression that made people not dare to approach him. Greetings to Elder Yin. The black-clothed man bowed. The old man opened his eyes, and two cold light burst out. Qin Feiyang also hurriedly bowed his head. The moment the old man opened his eyes, he felt as if he was being stared at by a poisonous snake, and a sense of fear uncontrollably emerged in his heart. This old man must be an extremely terrifying existence, and his methods were very bloody. Under the orders of the temple master, I brought Jiang Haotian to the prison. But the temple master said that it's just an ordinary prison. The black-clothed man said respectfully. The old man said coldly, "Got it, you can go back." Yes. The black-clothed man nodded in response, then turned around and said, "Jiang Haotian, this old man has a very high status in our Nine Heavens Palace, and even the temple master has to be polite to him. Don't offend him." "Understood," Qin Feiyang secretly said. "In addition, you have to be careful, because Elder Yun is Elder Yun's master." After the black-clothed man finished speaking, he left without looking back. Yin Hui's master, Qin Feiyang, was shocked. It was really a small world. Feng Wenhai and Yin Hui were husband and wife. Then this Elder Yin was very likely to make a move on him for Yin Hui. Then wouldn't he be a turtle in a jar in the prison? Thinking of this, Qin Feiyang couldn't help but feel a chill in his heart. One had to know, if Elder Yin really wanted to harm him, then in the prison he wouldn't be able to call for help. That wasn't right. If Elder Yin really wanted to harm him, then he believed that Shangguan Fenglan would definitely not let him come to the prison. In other words, Shangguan Fenglan trusted this old man. So it seemed that this Elder Yin should be an upright person and would not deliberately make things difficult for him for Yin Hui. However, one had to be wary of others. It was better to be careful in the future. Boom! Just as Qin Feiyang was deep in thought, the prison stone door slowly opened. Elder Yun said expressionlessly, "After you go in, go directly to the 3rd row, the 2nd cell." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and strode towards the stone door. Jiang Haotian, although Shangguan Fenglan said that it's just an ordinary prison, don't think that you have the right to be arrogant. If you dare to mess around in the prison, this old man will directly kill you. Elder Yin suddenly spoke again. Qin Feiyang's body stiffened, took a deep breath, and nodded. "Understood." With that, he entered the prison without looking back. Boom! The stone door also closed. Qin Feiyang stood in place, scanning the front. In front of him, there were a total of 5 corridors. Every 10 meters on the wall, there was an oil lamp hanging, flickering with faint candlelight, making this place extremely dark. On both sides of the corridor, there were iron doors. On each iron door, there was a number, and there was a small window more than half a meter wide. However, the small windows were also blocked by iron pillars as thick as an arm. One could only see the outside and could not climb out. Qin Feiyang walked into the 3rd corridor and then stopped in front of the 2nd iron door. This was his cell. Suddenly, a shrill scream came from the end of the corridor. Qin Feiyang was stunned and looked up. At the end of the corridor, there was an iron door, and it was completely closed, and the situation inside could not be seen. That miserable shriek came from behind the iron gate. Could that be the interrogation room? Qin Feiyang muttered. Crack! Suddenly, the iron door opened. 2 bare-chested brawny men in large underpants dragged a young man, dripping with blood, as they walked out. Qin Feiyang looked at the young man, and his pupils shrank. He was almost unrecognizable, like a dead dog moaning weakly. At the same time, when the 2 brawny men saw Qin Feiyang, they were slightly stunned. But then, a cruel smile crept up on their faces. "Here comes another one. Boy, what's your name? What did you do to get in here?" The 2 brawny men threw the young man into a cell, like garbage, closed the iron door with a bang, and then walked toward Qin Feiyang step by step. That look, as if staring at prey, was full of a murderous aura. "Jiang Haotian, murder," Qin Feiyang said. "Jiang Haotian?" The 2 of them were slightly stunned, looked at Qin Feiyang and said, "So you are Jiang Haotian?" Qin Feiyang smiled faintly, pushed open the iron door and walked in. "Wait, did we let you in?" The 2 of them pursed their lips into a sneer. "What's the matter?" Qin Feiyang was suspicious. "Don't you know the rules here? Anyone who comes here has to be treated well first, just like the person you just saw. Come on, The two of them walked to the iron door at the end and looked at Qin Feiyong with sneers. What do you mean? Qin Feiyong frowned. What do you think? Do you still remember Elder Feng Wenhai? He was a little bit hurt by you. The two of them were playing. Qin Feiyong's heart sank and said, You are Feng Wenhai's men. Don't talk nonsense. We just don't like what you did to Elder Feng, so we want you to suffer. Of course, in this prison, you don't have the right to choose. Hurry up. Don't make us do it ourselves. The two of them said with a smile. Qin Feiyong laughed and said, Sorry, I'm just an ordinary prisoner. After saying that, he turned around and entered the cell. The cell was about 5 or 6 meters, and there was nothing except a stone bed. No, there was blood. Whether it was the ground, the wall, or the stone bed, there were dried blood stains. Obviously, this was the blood of the people who used to be imprisoned here after being tortured and abused. Ordinary prisoner? Outside, the two strong men were a little stunned, but the next moment their faces were full of anger. The two of them rushed into the cell angrily and pressed Qin Feiyong on the ground. What are you doing? Qin Feiyong said angrily, What are we doing? Do you think ordinary imprisonment can prevent you from being tortured and interrogated? Naive. Here, we are the heavens. We will do whatever we say. The two of them looked at Qin Feiyong condescendingly, their faces full of sneers. At this moment, Qin Feiyong's eyes were extremely gloomy and said, This is Shangguan Fenglan's order. You dare to disobey her decree? Ha! Of course, we dare not disobey the decree of Lord Palace Lord. But Lord Palace Lord doesn't seem to know about this. So even if we kill you, we can casually find an excuse and say that you asked for it. The two of them laughed. Chapter 2131. Qin Feiyong's face was as gloomy as water. Obviously, these two brawny men were Feng Wenhai's men. Now they wanted to take this opportunity to avenge Feng Wenhai, which was to get rid of him. Qin Feiyong said in a deep voice, What benefits did Feng Wenhai give you to make you work so hard for him? I told you, this has nothing to do with Elder Feng. We just don't like you. Don't be so naive to think that Shangguan Fenglan's words can keep you safe. Let me tell you, as long as the two of us are here, you can forget about leaving the prison alive. The two of them grabbed Qin Feiyong and dragged him outside. Boom! But at this moment, the stone door of the prison opened. The two brawny men were shocked and hurriedly put down Qin Feiyong. Da-da! Accompanied by steady footsteps, an old man appeared in front of the three of them. Elder Yin. The two brawny men hurriedly bowed. Elder Yin glanced at Qin Feiyong, then looked at the two brawny men and said, What you said before, are you serious? The two of them looked rather flustered. Qin Feiyong got up from the ground. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he just looked at Elder Yin silently. He wanted to see if Elder Yin was a selfless old man. Elder Yin shouted, This old man is asking you, are you serious? Elder Yin. The two of them trembled and knelt on the ground. Elder Yin. We also want to avenge Elder Feng. Yes, yes, yes. Elder Feng was driven out of Nine Heavens Palace by this kid. We old subordinates have always been brooding about it. Elder Feng is our benefactor. We really can't stand this little bastard treating Elder Feng like this. Elder Yin, you are Elder Yin's master. Elder Feng has always treated you with the utmost respect. You, hearing this, Elder Yin's eyes suddenly burst out with a cold light, and he shouted, Shut up! The two of them trembled and did not dare to continue. Feng Wenhai was expelled from Nine Heaven Palace because he made a mistake. He deserved to be punished. As for you all, you actually dared to disregard the orders of the Hallmaster and use your position to avenge private wrongs. Do you know what sort of crime this is? Old Yin said coldly. Elder Yin, the two of them were flustered. Elder Yin said, "This old man doesn't want to fight. Kill yourself. Commit suicide." The two of them quickly changed their expressions and shouted, "Elder Yin, we know our mistake. Please let us go. We won't dare to do it again." Elder Yin didn't say a word. He just looked at the two of them. The two of them knelt on the ground and kowtowed nonstop. Their foreheads were bruised and blood flowed all over the ground. "It seems like you haven't fought for a long time. Even my words have no effect." Elder Yen's eyes turned cold. A wave of God power rolled out like a tidal wave and drowned the two of them. Accompanied by two painful screams, the two died on the spot. Not even their bones remained. Qin Feiyang's pupils contracted. This old man's methods were indeed bloody. After killing the two of them, Elder Yun glanced at Qin Feiyang, withdrew his god power, and turned to leave the prison. The stone door also closed. Qin Feiyang looked at the bloodstains on the ground and couldn't help but let out a breath. It seemed that this old man was indeed very upright, but he wasn't easy to get along with. He retracted his gaze and turned to enter the cell. After looking around, he directly entered the castle and went into seclusion to cultivate. He wasn't worried about this matter at all, because Great Elder and Shangguan Fenglan wouldn't let him die. Even if Great Elder wanted him to die, he still had a life-saving trump card in his hand. And this trump card was the cause of death of Great Elder's son. The next day, late at night, St. Peak, Cave Number 4, Mu Tianyang, Hui and Madman sat opposite each other, but the three of them didn't speak. The living room was dead silent. After a while, he raised his head and looked at Madman and Mu Tianyang. He frowned and said, "Senior brother Madman, brother Mu, say something." "Say what?" He asked for it. Madman said indifferently, "You can't say it like that. Brother Jiang was also schemed against by Yu Zijia. Indeed, Brother Jiang is also at fault, but we can't just watch him die." What Yi said. Mu Tianyang raised his head and looked at What Yi. "Have you asked Shangguan Fenglan how she dealt with him?" "I've already asked. She said that Brother Jiang is now locked in the prison." What Yi said. "Prison? What is this Shangguan Fenglan doing? Doesn't she know that the prison of the law enforcement hall is a netherworld?" Madman frowned. "I also asked. She said that it's just an ordinary prison. But I heard that the person guarding the prison is Yin Hui's master, called Elder Yin. He's very strong." What Yi said in a deep voice. "What?" Mu Tianyang suddenly stood up and said in surprise, "Yin Hui's master?" "Yes. I heard that this person has a very high status in Nine Heavens Palace. Even Shangguan Fenglan has to respect him. This is the problem I'm worried about. If Elder Yun uses his position to avenge a private grudge, then even with Shangguan Fenglan's protection, his life will be hard to protect." Hui sighed. Mu Tianyang said in a deep voice, "It seems that we really can't be careless about this matter. Actually, there's no need to worry. This old man also knows this old man. Although he is Yin Hui's master, he has an upright character and won't do anything to Jiang Haotian. The most important thing now is to investigate Yu Zijia. This trash, this old man has long disliked him. If it wasn't for the second elder backing him up, who knows how many times he would have died." Madman snorted coldly. "What does this Yu Zijia mean? Could it be that he holds a grudge because of that small matter at the auction house?" He raised his eyebrows. Madman said, "This old man has thought about it carefully. His target should be this old man." Yi and Mu Tianyang looked at each other. In the past, he was often bullied by this old man and has long held a grudge against this old man. It's just that his strength is too weak and he doesn't dare to openly oppose this old man. So he took a step back and made a move on Jiang Haotian. Actually, this old man is also to blame. During this period of time, I have been too close to Jiang Haotian, making everyone think that Jiang Haoyan is this old man's man. Madman sighed. If that's the case, then this account really needs to be settled with him. Hua Yi's eyes flashed with a cold light. You guys hold back first. This old man will arrange it. Damn it! To dare bully this old man, he is really courting death. After Madman finished speaking, he was about to get up, but at this moment, with a bang, something appeared out of thin air and landed in front of the three of them. Madman and the other two were startled and quickly looked down. Their faces suddenly changed. The thing that suddenly appeared was actually a corpse, and it was a corpse that was bleeding. Who? Madman roared and released his divine sense, enveloping the cave. But he couldn't find anything in the cave. Mu Tianyang and Hua Yi stepped forward and turned the corpse over. When they saw the face of the corpse, they immediately froze on the ground. Chengli, how could it be him? Madman was also dumbfounded. That's right. This corpse was the outer court elder, Chengli. He just died not long ago, but why would he appear in my cave? Senior Brother Madman, did you find anything like a spatial divine object? Hua Yi looked at Madman and asked. No, but someone must have deliberately sent it here. But what is this person's purpose? Madman frowned. Boom! But at this moment, the cave stone door was forcefully broken open. Madman and the other two looked over and saw a familiar figure standing at the door. Jin Yunchang. Madman's eyes darkened. Chengli, you guys actually joined hands to kill Elder Cheng. Jin Yunchang looked at the dead Cheng Li lying on the ground, and his eyes suddenly widened as he roared. Come quickly, Madman. Hua Yi Mu Tianyang kill Elder Cheng. His voice was like a bell, spreading in all directions. What? Madman and the others killed Elder Cheng. The disciples of the 10 sacred peaks immediately ran out of the cave and flew towards the 4th cave. They really killed him. Aren't they too bold? Cheng Li is an outer court elder. Even if he is Madman, he doesn't have the authority. The place suddenly became noisy. Madman and the other two looked at the disciples outside, then looked at Jin Yunchang, then lowered their heads to look at Cheng Li. They immediately understood. This was yet another meticulously planned murder plot, and Jin Yunchang was one of them. Jin Yunchang, you dare to frame me. Madman's body suddenly emitted a monstrous killing intent as he rushed in front of Jin Yunchang and grabbed his neck. His eyes were cold and bone-chilling. Madman, don't talk nonsense. Who dares to kill Elder Cheng and then frame you? If you are a man, you must dare to take responsibility for your actions. Jin Yunchang roared, his face pale. You still dare to deny it. You are courting death. Madman's killing intent rose, but suddenly a cold shout sounded. Madman, stop! Following closely, Shangguan Fenglan descended from the sky. Jin Yunchang hurriedly said, Hall Master Shangguan, quickly save me. This madman is completely crazy. Not only did he kill Elder Cheng, he also wants to kill me. You still dare to talk nonsense. Madman was furious. Shangguan Fenglan shouted, Let him go! Madman raised his head and stared at Shangguan Fenglan, his eyes flashing with an astonishing cold light. But under Shangguan Fenglan's majesty, he finally let go of Jin Yunchang. Jin Yunchang hurriedly ran behind Shangguan Fenglan and said, Hall Master, Cheng Li's corpse is inside the cave. Shangguan Fenglan landed at the entrance of the cave and looked at Cheng Li's corpse. She turned to look at Madman and sighed. Madman, I'm afraid even the great elder won't be able to save you this time. We didn't kill Cheng Li. Someone sent his corpse here before. Hua Yi and Mu Tianyang hurriedly said. Madman did not speak and kept staring at Jin Yunchang. That cold gaze made Jin Yunchang unable to help but feel fear. Sent here? Shangguan Fenglan frowned. We swear that we definitely didn't kill Cheng-Li. You should also understand, Madman. Although Madman is usually lawless, it is only limited to the disciples of Nine Heavens Palace. He doesn't dare to act recklessly against people of the elder level. What Yi said solemnly. Shangguan Fenglan's eyes flashed slightly, looking at Madman, and Mu Tianyang, she said, "Follow me to the law enforcement hall. Jin Yinchang, find a place and bury Cheng-Li." "Yes," Jin Yinchang respectfully responded. Chapter 2132. After Jin Yinchang left with Cheng-Li's corpse, Yi and Mu Tianyang looked at each other and couldn't help but sigh in their hearts. Mu Tianyang stepped forward and patted Madman's shoulder. "I know you're angry now, but things have already come to this. No matter what we say, no one will believe us. Let's go to the law enforcement hall first. I believe that the first elder and Shangguan Fenglan will investigate the truth and clear our names." Madman retracted his gaze and glanced at Mu Tianyang and Yi. He looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, "Let's go." Shangguan Fenglan soared into the air. Madman and the other two followed behind Shangguan Fenglan. But at this moment, a white-clothed youth holding a folding fan appeared behind the crowd on the left. "Yu Zijie." Madman's eyes were sharp, and he immediately noticed the white-clothed youth. His face suddenly turned cold. "He's also here." Could this matter be related to him? Mu Tianyang and Yi were surprised. Yu Zijie looked at the three from afar with a bright smile on his face. "Look at how happy he is. It's obvious that he's the one who brought Cheng-Li's corpse here." Madman transmitted. "This person's goal is indeed you. Yi Jiang Haotian and I were all implicated by you." Mu Tianyang sighed inwardly. What's the use of saying this now? Madman stared at Mu Tianyang and then looked at Yu Zijie. His lips didn't move as he silently said, "Kid, you're dead." "I'll wait." Yu Zijie also moved his mouth and silently smiled. "I really didn't expect Madman and the others to be so daring." "Yeah. First, Jiang Haotian used his power for personal gain and killed someone to silence them. Now, the three of them are colluding to kill Elder Cheng-Li. Is there really no one who can control them? Wrong. This time is different from the past. In the past, Madman did whatever he wanted, and the people he killed were mostly disciples. Therefore, all the big shots turned a blind eye to it. However, this time around he killed an elder. Although Cheng-Li's position in Nine Heavens Palace isn't high, not even comparable to the heaven-ranking disciples, he is still an elder. This matter definitely won't end well. Even if he's a madman, I'm afraid he won't be able to escape safely this time. This is also a good thing. Indeed, now that the madman is gone, we can relax. It's best to lock him up in prison and never let him out again. People were discussing in low voices, and there was a faint smile on their faces. An hour later, prison. The three young men walked into the prison angrily. "I've already said that we were framed. Why are they still locked up in prison?" One of them said angrily. This person was dressed in purple, with long hair and an extraordinary temperament. "Just bear with it. Lan also knows that we were framed, but without evidence, what can she do? Moreover, Lan has already taken good care of us. Just like Jiang Haotian, we're all just ordinary prisoners. Speaking of which cell is Jiang Haotian locked in? He must be very surprised to see us come in. Brother Jiang Haotian, do you hear my voice? Respond if you hear me." A fiery-haired young man shouted. He was also wearing a fiery red robe, and his entire person looked like a ball of flame. That's right. These three people were the madman, Mu Tianyang and Yi. And, inside the ancient castle, Qin Feiyang, who was sitting cross-legged on the ground, suddenly opened his eyes, and there was a trace of surprise in his eyes. Why did he seem to hear Yi's voice? "Brother Jiang, we're here to see you." Hua Yi's voice sounded again. It's really him. Qin Feiyang was startled and quickly left the ancient castle. He appeared in the prison and said loudly, I'm here. Da-da, accompanied by a burst of hurried footsteps. 3 figures quickly appeared outside the iron gate. Qin Feiyang looked at the 3 of them and said with a smile, You missed me so soon? Yes. A day without seeing you feels like 3 autumns. Hua Yi chuckled. Qin Feiyang was quite moved. Bang! The madman raised his foot and kicked the iron gate open. Then he looked around the prison and frowned. This place is also for people to stay? It can't be helped. It's a prison after all. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. What, he said, when you came in, did anyone make things difficult for you? Yes, there was. Qin Feiyang nodded and said with a frown, You're really here to see me? What, he nodded and said, Of course. Why else do you think we're here? Mu Tianyang looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Don't listen to his nonsense. We were also imprisoned by Shangguan Fenglan. What? Qin Feiyang was stunned. What? He said with dissatisfaction. Brother Mu, why are you so straightforward? I want to continue teasing him. Is this the time to joke? Mu Tianyang rolled his eyes. Wait, what the hell is going on? Senior brother madman, is what Mu Tianyang said true? Qin Feiyang was surprised. The madman nodded. Qin Feiyang was stunned. Why were these 3 people also locked up? Who was the one who kicked the door just now? Suddenly, accompanied by a cold shout, 5 black-clothed men walked over boldly and decisively. The 5 of them had bloodstains on their bodies and looked fierce. Who are they? Mu Tianyang was suspicious. They are the law enforcers in the prison. They are specifically responsible for interrogating and torturing prisoners like us. Qin Feiyang said in a low voice. Mu Tianyang said, We are just ordinary prisoners. They shouldn't dare, right? Not necessarily. When I came in, there were 2 law enforcers who wanted to torture me. But I'm afraid they won't this time. After all, Senior brother madman is here. Qin Feiyang glanced at the madman with a smile on his face. What are you doing? Who gave you the guts to kick the door? The 5 men walked over and looked at Qin Feiyang's group of 4 angrily. Qin Feiyang's group didn't say a word. The madman was still looking around the cell. Because of this, his back was facing the 5 of them. One of the burly men shouted, Jiang Haotian, I'm asking you a question. You ask and we have to answer. You have such a big face. The madman said indifferently. Presumptuous. Do you know where this is? How dare you be so arrogant? The 5 of them were furious. Then do you know who I am? The madman slowly turned around and looked at the 5 of them with a gloomy face. And, madman! The 5 of them stared at him. Why did this devil incarnate come to the prison? The madman crossed his arms and said coldly, I am the one who kicked the door. What do you want? No. Kick as much as you want until you're satisfied. Sorry to disturb you. The 5 of them quickly waved their hands and disappeared as if they were running for their lives. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, Senior Marshal Brother Frenzy's face, slapping, is indeed different. The madman smiled proudly. You just said that when you came in yesterday, someone came to find trouble with you? Qin Feiyang nodded and briefly explained the situation at that time. After listening, He shook his head and sighed. I really didn't expect that after Feng Wenhai was expelled from 9 Heaven Palace, there would still be people willing to work for him. From this, it can be seen how terrifying Feng Wenhai's influence in the enforcement hall was. Mu Tianyang said. Qin Feiyang frowned. Let's not talk about this first. How did you guys come in? Mu Tianyang sighed. It's a long story. Let's find a place to talk. Qin Feiyang looked meaningfully at Mu Tianyang and smiled. Then let's go to my spatial divine artifact. Clearly, Mu Tianyang didn't want to talk about some things in the prison because the walls had ears. And the spatial divine artifact Qin Feiyang mentioned wasn't the ancient castle, but the black tortoise world. In the depths of Nine Heaven Palace, in a courtyard, a divine power barrier enveloped the main hall. Inside the barrier, Feng Yuan sat in front of a tea table, angrily glaring at Jin Yunchang. "What are you doing? Who told you to act on your own?" Jin Yunchang asked suspiciously, "Father-in-law, isn't this a good thing?" "Good. Then tell me, what's good about it?" Feng Yuan said angrily, "Now that the four of them are locked in prison, isn't that good?" Jin Yunchang retorted, "But do you know that they're just ordinary prisoners? This means that Shangguan Fenglan doesn't believe that they killed Chang Li. Shangguan Fenglan will definitely investigate to the end." Feng Yuan said. Jin Yunchang smiled and said, "Father-in-law, don't worry, we did it very cleanly. Shangguan Fenglan definitely won't be able to find out. You're still proud." "Do you know what the consequences will be if it's found out that Chang Li was killed by you and Yu Zijia?" "You don't know? Then this old man will tell you. Yu Zijia is the disciple of the second elder. Even if the matter is exposed, the second elder will find a way to protect him. What about you? Who will protect you? This old man's position in Nine Heaven Palace is not as high as the second elder, so I definitely won't be able to protect you. At that time, you will be the scapegoat." Feng Yuan shouted, "What about my son? Are you going to let him die in vain? He's also your grandson." "Father-in-law, to tell you the truth, ever since he died, I've been thinking about avenging him. This time I finally found an opportunity. How can I let it go like this?" Jin Yunchang said bitterly. Hearing this, Feng Yuan fell silent. "Father, in fact, this matter was planned by me. It has little to do with Yunchang." But suddenly, a woman's voice rang out. Following closely, a purple-clothed woman appeared out of thin air in the enchantment, standing beside Jin Yunchang and bowing to Feng Yuan. "Huiyo." Feng Yuan was taken aback, hurriedly got up, and said in surprise, "When did you come out of seclusion?" "A few days ago," the woman said. "That's right. This person was Feng Zihan and Feng Zijuan's mother, the law enforcement hall elder Yin Hui." A few days ago, Feng Yuan was slightly taken aback and said suspiciously, "Since you came out of seclusion, why didn't you tell this old man?" "The news of me coming out was deliberately concealed, because I didn't want to attract the attention of Jiang Haoqian and the others, and I wanted to investigate one thing." Yin Hui respectfully replied. "What is it?" Feng Yuan asked. Yin Hui's eyes flashed with a cold light and said in a deep voice, "Who killed Zijuan?" Feng Yuan asked, "Then did you find out?" "Yes." Yin Hui nodded. Chapter 2133. Who? Feng Yuan asked. His old eyes flashed with killing intent. "Jiang Haotian." Yin Hui enunciated each word. "What?" "It's really him." Feng Yuan was stunned and hurriedly said, "Do you have evidence?" "Yes." Yin Hui nodded. "Quickly show it to this old man." Feng Yuan was impatient. He had long suspected Qin Feiyang, but because there was no evidence, he could only put this matter aside. "Father, don't be anxious. I still have something to do. When this matter is done, I will tell the truth in front of the great elder. At that time, Jiang Haotian will definitely die." Yin Hui said, "All right then." Feng Yuan nodded, pondered for a while, and said, "But Mu Tianyang, I've heard about Mu Tianyang's relationship with you from Yunchang, but he's just a subordinate. It doesn't matter if he dies. Moreover, Zijuan's death is also related to him." Yin Hui said, "It's also related to him?" Feng Yuan was surprised. "Damn it. Then all the more we can't let him go. Actually, to tell you the truth, this old man originally planned to kill him immediately after eliminating Jiang Haotian. This time Mu Tianyang also gave this old man an idea, saying that we should bring Jiang Haoyan and Hua Yi into the Sky Dragon Sea. This way, there will be a lot of opportunities to kill them, but now it seems that there's no need for that. However, this old man is very concerned about the blood blade in Mu Tianyang's hand. If there's a chance, we must get it. Feng Yuan said, "Prison, inside the Black Tortoise Realm." Qin Feiyang's group of 4 sat around a stone table in the courtyard. Yu Zijie and Jin Yunchang again? Qin Feiyang frowned after listening to Mu Tianyang's story. Mu Tianyang said, "You also guessed that Jin Yunchang was involved in this matter." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. He looked at Mu Tianyang and said, "Aren't you with Feng Yuan now? Does this have anything to do with Feng Yuan?" "I haven't heard him mention it at all. However, since Jin Yunchang is involved, this matter must have something to do with him." Mu Tianyang said. Hua Yi smiled and said, "It seems like Feng Yuan doesn't truly trust you." "I don't know if he trusts me or not, but why do I feel like there's something fishy about this?" Mu Tianyang frowned. "What do you mean?" Qin Feiyang and Hua Yi looked at him suspiciously. "A few days ago, I gave Feng Yuan the idea to go to the Heavenly Dragon Sea and eliminate you all on the way there. Logically, he shouldn't have attacked you all at a time like this." Mu Tianyang said. Hua Yi pondered for a moment and said, "Could it be that he changed his mind at the last moment?" Mu Tianyang rubbed his forehead and sighed, "Maybe. No matter what, we can't let our guard down this time, because we don't know what Feng Yuan and Yu Zijie are planning. Also, Yu Zijie blatantly came to frame us. Could it be related to the second elder?" Qin Feiyang said. Second elder. When Hua Yi and Mu Tianyang heard this, their hearts became heavy. If it was really related to the second elder, then this matter would not be ordinary trouble. "I didn't expect it. You guys actually did so many things behind my back, especially you, Mu Tianyang. You actually lurked around Feng Yuan." At this time, Madman, who had not spoken all this time, looked at the 3 of them and said. Qin Feiyang and the other 2 looked at each other and smiled. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "Senior Brother Madman, take us to your spatial divine object for a stroll." Madman was slightly taken aback, shook his head and said, "There's nothing to stroll around." Qin Feiyang said, "Is there nothing to stroll around, or do you not want us to go in?" "Why do you talk so much nonsense?" Madman glared at Qin Feiyang, stood up and scanned the Black Tortoise Realm, and said, "I'll take a good stroll around your spatial divine object first." Qin Feiyang's pupils shrank. With a wave of his hand, he brought the 3 of them out of the Black Tortoise Realm and appeared in the prison. Madman immediately glared at Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, "There's nothing to stroll around in my spatial divine object." Lotus Lake. A black-haired old man appeared out of thin air and hurriedly entered the pavilion. Inside the pavilion, Shengguan Fenglan sat alone at the coffee table with her head lowered and a frown on her face. She didn't even notice the black-haired old man walking in front of her. The black-haired old man frowned and said, "Fenglan." Shengguan Fenglan shuddered and hurriedly raised her head to look at the old man. Then she immediately stood up and bowed. "Greetings, Great Elder." The Great Elder sat opposite Shengguan Fenglan and asked, "Are you worried about Jiang Haoyan and the others?" Shengguan Fenglan nodded. "This old man is also here for this matter. Did they kill Cheng Li or not?" The Great Elder frowned. "No. You also know Madman's personality. Although he is arrogant and domineering, he still has a sense of propriety. And Madman also said that it was Yu Zijie and Jin Yunchang who worked together to frame them." Shengguan Fenglan said. "Then do you believe it?" the Great Elder asked. "Of course I believe it, and I have already sent my confidants to secretly follow the 2 of them. I just don't know if they can find evidence." Shangguan Fenglan said, "No matter what, this matter must be investigated clearly. If it was really Yu Zijie and Jin Yunchang who framed them, then even if Feng Yuan and Second Elder plead for them, this old man will not let them off." The Great Elder said solemnly. Shangguan Fenglan said with a smile, "It seems that you still care about Madman. Sigh. After all, for so many years, he is like this old man's grandson. Now that something has happened to him, how can this old man not worry?" The Great Elder sighed. Da-da. Before the Great Elder's voice fell, accompanied by a series of footsteps, a black-clothed man walked in. Seeing that the Great Elder was also here, the black-clothed man was stunned, then quickly bowed and said, "Greetings, Great Elder." The Great Elder nodded. "How is it?" Shangguan Fenglan looked at the black-clothed man and asked. The black-clothed man shook his head and said, "Since Yu Zijie left the St. Peak, this subordinate has been secretly following him, but from beginning to end, he has never mentioned anything about framing Madman and the others." Shangguan Fenglan frowned and said, "I didn't expect this child to be so cautious. Yu Zijie is a shrewd person. How could he let us easily catch him?" The Great Elder shook his head and asked, "What about Jin Yunchang?" This subordinate is not sure, because Jin Yunchang was followed by Wang Yun. The black-clothed man shook his head. Before his voice fell, another black-clothed woman hurriedly walked in. This woman was Wang Yun. Shangguan Fenglan hurriedly said, "Wang Yun, how is it?" Wang Yun bowed to the Great Elder and said, "Jin Yunchang went to see Feng Yuan, and this subordinate also saw a person." "Who?" Shangguan Fenglan asked. "Yin Hui," Wang Yun said. "Yin Hui? Isn't she cultivating in seclusion?" Shangguan Fenglan was surprised. "I'm not sure either. Feng Yuan set up a divine force barrier. I can't hear what they are saying. But there is one thing that is very strange. Before Yin Hui appeared, Feng Yuan seemed to be a little angry, as if he was scolding Jin Yunchang. But after Yin Hui appeared, Feng Yuan's attitude changed. In the end, they even talked and laughed." Wang Yun said, "Yin Hui, Feng Yuan, could it be that this matter is related to Yin Hui?" The Great Elder frowned. "Great Elder, why don't we use your method of astronomical phenomena to monitor them?" Shangguan Fenglan suggested. "It's useless, because what you can think of, they can also think of, so they will definitely prevent this old man from spying. And the divine force barrier set up by Feng Yuan is the best proof." The Great Elder shook his head. "Then what should we do?" Shangguan Fenglan raised her eyebrows. Wang Yin said, "Great Elder, Hall Master, why don't we capture Jin Yunchang?" Jin Fatso was killed by Jiang Haoyan. Jin Yunchang hates Jiang Haoyan to the bone. I'm afraid that even if we torture him, he won't tell the truth. And Yu Zijie is even more so. Before we have evidence, if we make a move on him, I'm afraid that before the interrogation begins, the Second Elder will already come to our door." Shangguan Fenglan sighed. Wang Yun nodded. It made sense. Shangguan Fenglan pondered for a while. She looked at the First Elder and said, "First Elder, I think we should bide our time on this matter because they will definitely have a next step in their plan. When the time comes, we will deal with them." "All right." The Great Elder nodded. In the blink of an eye, 2 days passed. To Shangguan Fenglan's surprise, Feng Yuan, Jin Yunchang, Yin Hui, and Yu Zijie didn't do anything these 2 days. However, the disciples of the sect, as well as the people outside of the sect, were discussing these two matters. How is it possible? Jiang Haoyan is such a kind person. Why would he do such a thing? Could it be that he was pretending to do all those things in the past, deliberately doing it for us to see? Pretending? I don't believe it. There must be something fishy about this. Yes, I don't believe it either. Even if Yu Zijie has evidence, even if they caught him in the act, it doesn't mean that this matter is true. Moreover, based on the video released by Uzijia, those 4 people do deserve to die. That's right. At first, they agreed to 400,000 soul stones, but in the end, they went back on their word and changed it to 4 million, and Jiang Haotian also agreed. But in the end, when they saw that Jiang Haotian was easy to bully, they actually asked for 100 million soul stones each. If it were me, I would also want to kill. Besides, it's just a private transaction with others. What's so strange about it? Can you guarantee that no one else in the resource hall has done such a thing? It's just that no one knows. In short, we can't just say that Jiang Haotian is a hypocrite based on this matter. Some people had always trusted Qin Feiyang and exonerated Qin Feiyang, but there were also people who talked behind his back, saying that Qin Feiyang was a hypocrite. In short, there are people saying all kinds of things. The most worried person was Shang Guanqiu. One had to know that in the entire North region, only Qin Feiyang and Mu Tianyang knew how to refine the 9-chu yellow dragon pill, 9 transformation dragon blood pill, and 4 symbols infinite divine pill. But now, both of them were locked up in prison. If there were any accidents, then no one would be able to refine these pills in the future, right? She had also asked the Vice Pavilion Master and the Pavilion Master about this matter. But whether it was the Pavilion Master or the Vice Pavilion Master, they all had the attitude of waiting and watching. Because this was an internal matter of Empyrean Palace, they couldn't interfere. Chapter 2134. Another 3 days passed. In other words, 5 days had passed since the incident. This morning, a purple-clothed young man came to the prison. In the prison, Qin Feiyang and the other 3 were not as worried as everyone imagined. In the middle of the cell, there was a large iron pot. Below it, a cluster of 3rd-grade alchemy fire burned the bottom of the pot red. In the big pot, there was a pot of fragrant meat stewing. Qin Feiyang and the other 3 sat around the iron pot, eating meat and drinking wine while chatting happily. The entire prison was filled with the rich aroma of meat and wine. The meat and wine, the big iron pot, and the alchemy fire were naturally found by Qin Feiyang from the Black Tortoise World. The Black Tortoise World was an independent world. As for this suggestion, it was proposed by the madman. Anyway, it was boring to stay here, so it was better to drink wine and eat meat. In other words, in the past 5 days, they had been eating, drinking, and playing. Qin Feiyang was not in the mood to do so, because he wanted to cultivate, but the madman had been watching him, so he could not go to the castle, so he could only play with the other 3. The enforcers in the prison were all dumbfounded, because it was the first time they saw someone who was still in the mood to eat meat and drink wine after entering the prison. Boom! The prison's stone door opened. The purple-clothed young man walked in and immediately smelled the fragrance of meat and wine. What's going on? The purple-clothed young man was a little stunned. He followed the fragrance of meat and wine, and when he saw the situation of Qin Feiyang and the other 3, he was immediately stunned at the door. What the hell? Are they really here to stay in the prison? Qin Feiyang and the other 3 also noticed the purple-clothed young man and were slightly stunned. Then, Qin Feiyang stood up, looked at the purple-clothed young man, and asked with a smile, "Gongzi Feng, why are you here?" "I'm here to see you," Gongzi Feng answered instinctively, but before he finished, he frowned and said, "Wait, what's going on?" "Isn't it obvious? We're drinking wine and eating meat." Hui grinned. Gongzi Feng was a little stunned. How could there be preferential treatment in this prison? These fellows were too arrogant. Where did they place the enforcers in the prison? "Since you're here, let's go together." Qin Feiyang waved his hand, took out a stool, and placed it at the side. "That's not a good idea." Gongzi Feng was somewhat hesitant. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said, "Senior Brother Crazy is here. Don't be afraid." Gongzi Feng glanced at the madman, then looked at Mu Tianyang and Hui. He clenched his teeth and said, "Fine, I'll accompany you in your madness." As he spoke, he walked to Qin Feiyang's side and sat down on a stool. Then he picked up the wine pot beside him and took a big gulp. Madman glanced at Gong Zifeng and sent a voice transmission. "Kid, you're acquainted with this person?" "Yes. In the past, he contributed a lot in dealing with Feng Wenhai and Feng Yuan." Qin Feiyang thought. "Ugh." Madman was stunned. Mu Tianyang asked, "Gong Zifeng, are you really here to visit us?" "Not really." Gong Zifeng shook his head and looked outside the door. He asked in a low voice, "Is it convenient to talk here?" Qin Feiyang and the other three looked at each other. Madman waved his hand and set up a divine power barrier. He looked at Gong Zifeng and said, "Speak now." Gong Zifeng took another sip from the wine pot and said in a deep voice, "Actually, all of this is Yu Zijie and Jin Yunchang's plan. It seems that you're here to tip them off, but we've already guessed what you said." Qin Feiyang said with a smile. "Guessed?" Gong Zifeng was stunned and shook his head with a smile. "That's right. With your brains, you should be able to think of this." Qin Feiyang said, "Although we can think of this, there are still many doubts in our hearts. Can you answer us? This matter isn't as simple as you think. Yesterday, I asked Jin Yunchang to go to the Yulan Pavilion and drank with him until midnight. I believe that you've already guessed that I asked him to drink with me to get information from him. Although Jin Yunchang is my uncle, he usually ignores me. At first, he didn't mention a single word about this matter. However, under my fawning and currying favor with him, coupled with the effects of alcohol, he finally revealed everything. The real mastermind of this matter is actually Yin Hui," Gong Zifeng said. Yin Hui, Qin Feiyang, and the other three looked at each other. Some time ago, she already came out of seclusion, but she didn't say anything. She has been secretly investigating the cause of Feng Zijuan's death and plotting how to get rid of you, Gong Zifeng said in a deep voice. Madman frowned and said, "I didn't expect that woman to be so shrewd. Quite terrifying. And I heard that she has already found evidence of Feng Zijuan's death." Gong Zifeng said, "That's not scary, right? Only the few of us know about this matter. Even senior brother Madman doesn't know." Qin Feiyang frowned. "What, you killed Feng Zijuan?" Madman was stunned. "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded. Madman said, "In that case, you were also the one who extorted White Tiger's blood essence." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded again. "Fuck, I just took office, and you're already causing trouble for me. Do you believe that I won't destroy you?" Madman said angrily. Qin Feiyang smiled embarrassedly and looked at Gong Zifeng. "Are you sure that Yin Hui has already found evidence?" Jin Yunchang said so. "I'm not sure whether it's true or not." Gong Zifeng shook his head, his face full of worry. "Because he was the one who killed Feng Zijuan. Even if they find out, you don't have to worry. Because according to the current situation, they don't know that you are also involved. Otherwise, Jin Yunchang wouldn't have gone drinking with you," Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Gong Zifeng was stunned and said, "That makes sense, but we still can't be careless." "Yes." Qin Feiyang nodded and asked, "Then how did they set up the trap? And that Yu Zijia, how did he know that the four of them would come to my cave abode at night to trade with me for the dragon god's flower? This is Yin Hui's trap. Yin Hui gave them the dragon god's flower because she found out that you are an alchemist and might be interested in the dragon god's flower, so she asked the four of them to bring the dragon god's flower to the resource hall. Of course, at first, she wasn't completely confident that you would take the bait, but she didn't expect that you would really take the bait. Then she carried out her plan. First, she found Yu Zijia. Because of senior brother Madman, Yu Zijia held a grudge against you. After hearing Yin Hui's plan, he agreed without a second thought. Then, she found Jin Yunchang. You killed Fatso Jin, so it was even more impossible for Jin Yunchang to refuse. Then, what happened next happened. Gongzi Feng said, I see. Qin Feiyang suddenly understood. Hua Yi said unhappily, Brother Jiang, look, it's all your fault. If you didn't have any ideas about the Dragon God's flower, none of this shit would have happened. You can't blame Brother Jiang for this. Even if the bait of the Dragon God's flower failed, Yin Hui would have sent out a bait that was even more tempting. It's just a pity that the four of them died unjustly. Gongzi Feng sighed. Qin Feiyang said, this is the result of being greedy. If they didn't listen to Yin Hui, would they have died? Gongzi Feng nodded, looked at the four of them, and said, that's what happened. I wonder if you have any plans now? Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and said with a smile, I do have one, but it'll have to rely on you. Rely on me? Gongzi Feng was stunned. Yes, as long as you can get evidence that they framed us, then we can turn defeat into victory. Qin Feiyang said, this, I'm afraid I can't. Gongzi Feng was a little troubled. If you can ask Jin Yunchang out once, then you can ask him out a second time. As long as you record your conversation with Jin Yunchang, then it can be used as evidence. Qin Feiyang said, Gongzi Feng pondered for a while and nodded. Okay, I'll give it a try, but you have to promise that you will protect my safety afterwards. Because once I take out the evidence, Feng Yuan and the others will definitely not let me go. Frenzy said domineeringly, don't worry, I'll protect you in the future. Thank you, Senior Brother Frenzy. Gongzi Feng hurriedly stood up and cupped his hands. With Frenzy's protection, there would definitely be no problem. Mu Tianyang held the wine pot and said with a smile, come, 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 let's continue drinking. Gongzi Feng also held the wine pot and drank with the four of them. About an hour later, Gongzi Feng put down the wine pot and stood up with a smile. I can't stay any longer in case Yin Hui becomes suspicious. I'll go back first. Be careful, Qin Feiyang reminded. Gongzi Feng nodded and was about to leave when he suddenly looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Big Brother Jiang, you know where Guyong is, right? I know. Qin Feiyang nodded. Then where is he now? I heard from Gao Xiaolong that you're going to ask him to help me. Why haven't I seen him after so long? Gongzi Feng was suspicious. There's a change of plans, Qin Feiyang said. I see. Gongzi Feng nodded and said, then can you tell me? To be honest, I really need someone who can give me advice and advice. Guyong is indeed smart, but he doesn't want to enter the Nine Heavens Palace now. Let's not force him, Qin Feiyang said. Gongzi Feng smiled and said, just tell me, I want to talk to him personally. This? Qin Feiyang hesitated and nodded. All right, he's now. But Qin Feiyang's words stopped abruptly as his eyes flickered slightly. What's wrong? Gongzi Feng looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyang smiled and said, with us giving you advice, you don't need him any more. Gongzi Feng said, I can't trouble you guys for everything. After all, you guys have your own things to do. Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice. Qin Feiyang, what are you doing? Isn't it just Guyong? There's no harm in telling him. Hua Yi and Frenzy also looked at Qin Feiyang suspiciously. Something's wrong, Qin Feiyang said inwardly. What's wrong? The three of them were even more confused. Gongzi Feng and I have known each other for a long time. Why didn't he ask about Guyong's whereabouts before? Moreover, Gao Xiaolong is a spy I placed beside him. Logically speaking, such a sensible person like Gao Xiaolong shouldn't tell Gongzi Feng that I have the idea of letting Guyong help him. Qin Feiyang secretly said, You're tuning in to the Thunder Spear YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.